They say you see your life flash before your eyes right before you die. An old dying man once told Shuichi to look after his mom and sister. Shuichi had a loving family. His mother packed his favorite omelet for his school lunch. She had just found a new part-time job, so she told him not to worry about money and to focus on his studies. His younger sister even shared her favorite candy with him. Before he left, his mother reminded him to always remember what she had taught him. But at school, reality was cruel. The omelet was thrown onto the floor and crushed under someone's shoe. Then his classmates started kicking him. They mocked him, saying a weak punk like him had no right trying to play hero for some girl. Even the girlfriend of one of the bullies warned him. She told him not to anger them and said he should just look after himself instead of her. On his way home, as he crossed the street, a truck came speeding toward him. Both Shuichi and the driver froze in shock when they saw each other. There was no time to react. The truck hit him head-on. Lying bloodied under the rainy night sky, Shuichi wondered if this was truly the end. His final thoughts went to his mother and his little sister, Azusa. He felt nothing but sadness that he couldn't protect them. A crowd slowly gathered around his broken body. Someone rushed to call an ambulance. As his last tear fell, a blue butterfly fluttered down and hovered in front of his face. In his fading mind, he made a vow. In his next life, he would protect the people he loved with his own 2 hands. His blood continued to spread across the road as more people gathered in silence. Meanwhile, on the magic continent of Arcanas, a massive circular hall was packed with people, all facing a raised platform. A winged statue towered above the one standing beneath it. The air was tense and sacred as an announcement echoed through the hall, declaring the start of the annual divine blessing. Children under the age of 6 would offer their most treasured possession to the gods. If the offering was accepted, a divine messenger would descend. That spirit would sense the child's hidden magical element and grant them a chance to become a mage. Any child wishing to receive the blessing had to sign their name. One child tugged on his mother's sleeve and asked if offering his candy would let him learn magic. His mother gently explained that the offering needed to be something valuable, like the expensive gems owned by nobles. Nearby, a noblewoman presented a pair of teardrop-shaped earrings. Deep blue, glass-like gems were set in gold, each topped with a small red bead. The crowd gasped. One woman exclaimed that Lady Blank's gemstone was incredibly precious. The noblewoman calmly replied that the greater the offering, the higher the chance of being blessed. Her son stood beside her wearing a smug smile. On the other side of the hall, commoners whispered among themselves, gossiping that the Ryan family had poured their entire fortune into this one gamble. Then, a man stepped forward. He arrived with his entire family, his wife, his son, and his youngest daughter. Behind them stood a butler carrying a massive box. The crowd murmured that if they went this far and still failed, it would be a true tragedy. Holt Ryan was the head of the Ryan family. He had wagered everything on this moment, betting the future of his bloodline. Lucas Ryan was the 8th child of the family. He had a younger sister named Julia. Among all the siblings, those 2 were the brightest. Holt was confident they would receive a high-level blessing. The priest called for the next offering. It was Julia Ryan. She gently placed a crown onto the table. A magic circle instantly formed. It radiated overwhelming power. She received the blessing of Kahai, the god of thunder. And it was level 7. It had been 12 years since a blessing this high had appeared. It was an unbelievable talent. Holt declared that their family had been chosen by the gods. The light from the magic circle slowly faded. Julia herself didn't even understand what had just happened. Her offering was the Thunder Track crown. Some people whispered that the result didn't seem valuable enough to justify the Ryan family sacrificing their entire fortune. Then, they remembered there was still one more child. Many believed it would be him who offered the true legendary treasure. Holt gently straightened Lucas's tie. He was next. Deep down, Holt placed even higher expectations on him. The butler handed Lucas the offering. The moment it appeared, everyone felt a chilling, demonic aura. They immediately realized what it was. The progenitor of magic, Vulcanus, the god of fire. Julia cheered for her big brother. Lucas smiled and gave her a thumbs up. Even the priest was shaken. He couldn't believe someone would offer something so terrifyingly valuable. He could tell the head of the Ryan family was betting everything he owned on this one child. Lucas placed the sword onto the table. The sky suddenly changed. Dark gray clouds burned with streaks of red and orange, like fire crawling through ash. It looked violent and scorched, as if the sky itself was burning. No one had ever seen anything like it. Holt believed this had to be the highest possible level, level 9. The flames surged without warning, growing wild and blinding. Around Lucas, fire spun into a violent whirlwind. Lucas could barely keep his eyes open. He froze when the sword suddenly appeared in front of him. Then he noticed a tiny flame resting on the back of his hand. In the next instant, it exploded across his arm. His body convulsed as if something detonated inside him. Agony tore a scream from his throat as the flames crushed and burned him at the same time. Above him, a blazing sword took shape, its blade flowing with molten fire. The sword slowly burned away. Moments later, the sky returned to normal. Everyone waited, searching for the divine spirit. They wondered if the blessing was complete. Someone suddenly pointed toward the altar. Lucas was sent flying, his body twisting through the air as blue energy trailed behind him. Dust and debris burst outward from the impact. He lay still, eyes wide and empty. Seeing her brother like that, Julia burst into tears. His family rushed to his side. They begged him to wake up. Holt couldn't understand how this could have happened. The priest finally spoke. The god had rejected him. Lucas Ryan had been forsaken by the progenitor of magic. A butterfly drifted toward his body. Meanwhile, in the realm of fire, someone cursed loudly. He raged that the Ryan family dared to offer the very power that had once nearly killed him. That sword still carried the mark of the strike that wounded him. He swore never to forgive them. A small flame pixie fluttered nearby, trying to fan the flames down. Volcanus said they should be grateful. He had only burned the child's soul to ash. The flame pixie quickly flattered him, calling him generous, merciful, and benevolent. But the pixie noticed something strange. A soul from another world had slipped into the child's body. It asked if it should burn that as well. Volcanus dismissed it, saying there was no reason to waste time erasing an insect from another world. They turned their attention to the next offering. It looked fairly decent. Meanwhile, the butterfly entered Lucas's body. When his eyes opened, they released a golden light. At the same time, in the realm of the martial god's heavenly source, a man with long red hair sat in meditation, as golden light flowed from him like sunlight. His left eye remained closed, yet a thin glow leaked from beneath it. When he opened both eyes, they burned with gold. He stepped onto ground that reflected the blue sky like a mirror. The moment his foot touched it, the ground shattered. He inhaled deeply. As he walked forward, the entire realm cracked apart, revealing a dark cosmos beneath. A massive shadowy creature with glowing red eyes emerged from the sea of stars. It was known as the wellspring of power that governed the world. Beneath it stood the man, glowing gold, calm, and fearless. The man asked whether it intended to block his path to a higher dimension. The creature slowly opened its mouth. A beam of dark light erupted from it. That attack was meant to erase him completely. When the light faded, the man charged straight through it. He struck the creature with a single punch. Blowing its body apart, a massive wave of power burst outward, stretching across the void. He laughed softly. As he watched, the shattered remains burned away. Then he walked toward the light ahead. A faint smile appeared on his face. He remarked that this so-called wellspring of power was nothing special. Suddenly, a golden light like a blazing sun appeared behind him. A small pixie that looked just like him came running over, calling him Lord Martial God. The martial god calmly asked why his attendant spirit had dared to block his path. At that moment, he sensed it. His old partner, Reku, had just been destroyed. Curiosity stirred within him about what was happening on the Arcanus continent. The attendant spirit showed him a vision of Volcanus breathing fire. He was shocked. 1,000 years ago, martial arts had stood above magic. Now that fire god Volcanus was being worshipped. Anger welled up as he recalled nearly cutting that bastard down back then. The attendant spirit remarked that if he hadn't been so obsessed with martial arts, that pathetic god would never have been able to run wild. He replied that spreading the way of martial arts was a heavy burden. A small flame appeared at his forehead. He admitted he had no interest in developing it, but he knew, even so, that it was his duty to pass it on. And so a tiny being like him devoted himself endlessly to training. Someone slowly regained consciousness. He could hear a voice. Confusion filled his mind. It felt like he hadn't died. He slowly opened his eyes. He saw countless identical faces of the martial god surrounding him. He was completely dumbfounded. The martial god introduced himself as Mars. He declared that he would bestow the blessing of the martial god upon him. Lucas was utterly confused. In the distance, the martial gods looked like small suns arranged in a perfect circle. Mars repeated his introduction while flexing his muscles. Once again, he stated that he would grant him his blessing. A beam of golden light struck Lucas's head. His eyes turned gold, and a notification appeared, Blessing of the Martial God Level 9. The level cap for martial arts training had been removed. He barely managed to support himself. He had no idea what any of it meant. He didn't even realize his body was overflowing with power. What caught his attention the most was how incredibly ripped the spirit was. He couldn't understand what was happening. He was Shuichi. He clearly remembered being hit by a truck. He should have been dead. And yet he was alive. Suddenly memories flooded into his mind. He realized he had become Lucas Ryan. That realization made him think the gods were playing with him. Apparently Shuichi had reincarnated into a world of magic as a child who had just been abandoned by the gods. At this rate, his clan would surely disown him. His new life might end up even worse than his previous one. He thought about his mother and sister and felt anxious, but at least in his old world, they would be able to live off his insurance money. He looked down and saw his hands glowing. He couldn't believe he had received the blessing of the martial god when he didn't even know what martial arts were. A sudden noise snapped his attention to the floor. Someone had accidentally dropped a piece of candy. He froze when he saw who it was. It was Julia. She was bursting into tears. She couldn't hold it in anymore. She ran forward and hugged him tightly, overwhelmed with relief that he was awake. She had been terrified after hearing Jeremy and the others say that he might never wake up. He gently patted her head, calming her down. That was when it truly sank in. She was Lucas's sister, Julia. At the same time, he couldn't stop thinking about Azusa. She must have been devastated when he died. He had lost everything when he reincarnated, but this time was different. This time, he was determined to protect those precious to him in this life. No matter what it took, he would protect them with everything he had, and with that resolve, he entrusted everything to the martial god. At the altar, the statue suddenly made a sound. Then its eyes began to bleed. Blood poured down, forming a dark puddle on the floor. From that pool, a woman slowly emerged. She sensed that the loathsome man's presence was gone. She was referring to the martial god. She wondered whether he had died or simply left this world. She had very little power left. So she knelt down and drank the blood dripping from the statue. She even seemed to enjoy it. Without the martial god standing in their way, this world would soon belong to them. 9 years later, at the Ryan family estate. The bell rang, and a man wiped the sweat from his face. Lucas had grown a lot. He stood under the bright blue sky waiting for Julia to finish her magic training. He decided to go meet her. Suddenly, he sensed something behind him, a thorny vine wrapped tightly around his body. Lucas looked annoyed. He already knew who did this. It was Jeremy. Jeremy greeted him mockingly, saying it was nice to meet him again, the child abandoned by the gods. Jeremy Ryan was the 4th child of the Ryan family, a magic student with a level 5 blessing, and Lucas's half-brother. The maid beside him looked surprised that Lucas hadn't been kicked out yet. Jeremy reminded him that the backyard was reserved only for the family's mages. The vines then tightened around Lucas's body. He threatened that Lucas might finally learn his lesson after a few broken ribs. Lucas simply yawned. He calmly said that his sister was just finishing her magic practice and would be back any second. Lucas then glared at him and warned that if he didn't want to get fried by lightning, he should let go now. Both Jeremy and the maid stiffened in fear. Still, Jeremy forced himself to act tough, mocking Lucas for hiding behind his sister. He claimed he wasn't afraid of lightning. Right on cue, lightning struck him. Jeremy was instantly scorched. The maid's face turned pale. Not long after, Lucas sensed someone behind him. It was Julia. She had unleashed the lightning using her pink staff. She warned Jeremy that if he bullied her brother again, she wouldn't go easy on him next time. She puffed her cheeks in anger. Then she told her big brother that she would remove the vines now. The vines loosened and fell to the ground. Lucas patted her head, and she smiled happily. He then asked Jeremy if he had learned his lesson and hoped he wouldn't try it again. Jeremy burned with rage. The maid hurriedly dragged him away. Lucas watched him run off just fine and commented that Julia had really gone easy on him with that last strike. Julia replied that if Lucas wanted to, he could easily beat Jeremy himself. She asked why he never fought back. Lucas reminded her that his true strength was still their little secret. And besides, he said, his little sister would protect him. He smiled faintly. It had been 9 years since Shuichi reincarnated into Lucas's body. 9 years ago, on the day he woke up, Lucas's father came to see him. Lucas was sure he would be kicked out for failing to meet expectations. But instead, Holt threw his cane aside. He rushed forward, hugged Lucas tightly, and cried. He was simply grateful that his son had woken up. That was all that mattered. Lucas nodded silently. Holt led a night order, so he was rarely home. Even so, he was a good father who genuinely cared about his children. When Holt learned that Lucas had begun training in martial arts, he immediately sent him a letter filled with advice. He told Lucas that the family archive contained old martial arts books and hoped they would help his training. So Lucas went down into the basement. Thanks to that letter, a bold plan took shape in his mind. The young Lucas suddenly disappeared. One maid grew worried because he ran off alone every day. Another maid dismissed it, saying he would be kicked out soon anyway for being unable to use magic. Then they felt tremors. The ground had been shaking often lately. They assumed someone was practicing earth magic, but in reality, the ground was being punched. By Lucas. He spent 6 months digging beneath his room to create a secret training ground. He divided it into 4 sections. There was a study area, a storage room, a training area, and finally, a bath. He had spent most of his money on the other equipment, so he settled for a cheap tub. Ever since completing the underground space, he trained there every single day in secret, at the present time. Lucas jumped into his tub. Soaking in a medicinal bath was the most efficient way to train martial arts. It had been 3 years since he started training, using a book from the archive called the Chaotic Tempering Technique. Now, any magic attack of level 5 or lower couldn't even scratch him. His defense had finally taken shape. He stepped out of the tub and walked toward a training dummy to work on offense. He drew his sword and slashed. He turned around, then switched weapons to a spear. He struck again, slicing the dummy into countless fragments. The pieces were so fine, they scattered into the air. That was his cloud-piercing swift thunder spear, now at level 4. He decided to continue practicing. His skills had steadily improved over the past 9 years, but one thing still bothered him. According to the books, martial artists eventually hit a hard limit. To break through, they must achieve enlightenment. But enlightenment was so difficult that most people gave up in despair. That was the real reason martial arts faded, even though it was no weaker than magic. However, Lucas was different. He stood before a larger punching bag and took a deep breath. He focused and struck with everything he had. The massive punching bag exploded, and even the wall behind it cracked. Lucas exhaled slowly. That attack was Frenzied War High Explosive Fist, level 5. His levels kept rising as if there was no limit at all. He suspected this was the true effect of a divine blessing. His techniques included Quick Draw Flash at level 9, Aura Slash at level 4, Critical Armor Piercing Sword at level 4, Cloud Turning Sea Overturning Palm at level 5, Chaotic Tempering Technique at level 4, and Cloud Piercing Swift Thunder Spear at level 3. It was already 6 p.m. He remembered that Holt was coming home, and the family would be eating together. He returned to his room. After cleaning himself up, he stepped outside and headed to the dining room. Holt greeted him warmly, saying it had been half a year since they last met. He told Lucas to sit, saying he had been waiting. Lucas replied politely. Holt then explained that Allen Magic Academy had opened a special martial arts department and that he had already signed Lucas up. Jeremy clicked his tongue when he heard that. Martial arts were difficult, but Holt believed Lucas could handle it. The entrance exam was next week, so he told him to prepare well. Lucas thanked his father. No matter which world he lived in, Shuichi still wanted to grow stronger and protect what mattered, but he knew standing out too much would only invite trouble. Suddenly, Julia raised her hand. She announced that she wanted to attend Allen Magic Academy with him. Holt said it was a good goal, but she was only 11 and too young to enroll. Julia quickly pointed out that the academy had an elite class with no age restriction. Then she revealed that she had already received an offer for the elite class. Holt read the letter. He realized that her reputation as a genius had already reached Allen Academy. Her mother smiled and said they might soon see a great mage born from the Ryan family. Jeremy looked visibly jealous. He struggled to contain his anger. Holt said he would pray for both children to pass their exams safely. Jeremy complained that he understood Julia's situation, but didn't see why Lucas deserved special treatment. He worried Lucas attending a magic academy would tarnish his reputation. His mother pinched him. He yelped in pain and she told him to calm down. She reassured him that there was nothing to worry about. This woman was Jessica Ryan, the second wife of the Ryan family and Jeremy's mother. She calmly stated that it wasn't guaranteed Lucas would pass the exam. A sinister smile crept across her face. 1 week later, it was time to depart for the Magic Academy. Lucas and Julia's mother told them to take care of themselves. She promised that once they were settled, she would visit and bring their favorite pudding. Before they left, she handed them the lucky coin their father had given them. The coin came from the Buon dynasty, which unified the world nearly 10,000 years ago. Their father had obtained it while subjugating a powerful magic beast. The front of the coin bore the image of Mars, the first emperor, while the back showed the weapon he once wielded. When Holt had shown it to them as children, Lucas remembered thinking that Mars looked like a ridiculously ripped ancient spirit. Holt had always insisted they keep the coin with them as a good luck charm. As Lucas watched his parents see them off, memories of his parents from his previous life surfaced. Having been blessed with a loving family in both lives made him feel truly fortunate. After that, they set off. A few hours later, as the sun began to sink, they decided to camp in a clearing ahead. Before darkness fell, they had already lit a bonfire. Their butler explained that if they departed early the next morning, they would reach Daku Town, where the Allen Magic Academy was located, by nightfall. Julia was confident they would arrive quickly. She asked the butler, Mr. Forden, if Daku Town had anything interesting. He told her the town was famous for its annual magic dodgeball tournament held every spring. It was also well known as a gourmet town. Lucas noticed Julia starting to drool. Suddenly, he sensed something wrong. 2 kilometers away, 12 horses and 13 people were approaching rapidly. He recalled that bandits often operated in this area. Forden confirmed it, but added that encounters were considered rare. Lucas's chaotic tempering technique gave him more than just durability and healing. It had sharpened his senses far beyond normal. He was certain he wasn't imagining things. There were only 5 of them, and one was a child. They had to be careful. He informed everyone that an unknown group was heading straight toward them at high speed and ordered them to form up. The knights stared at him in confusion. They couldn't hear a thing, not even a bird, so they had no idea what he was talking about. Forden immediately drew his sword. He scolded the knights and shouted for them to prepare their weapons at once. They could only obey. Forden didn't know how Lucas sensed the danger, but he believed it was better to be safe than sorry. The sound of galloping grew louder. The knights were stunned when they realized Lucas had been right. The bandits were thrilled to find prey. Their leader had predicted it. Right before the Allen Magic Academy exams, nobles were everywhere. They spotted Julia and laughed, saying she would fetch a high price. As for the boy beside her, Lucas, they figured certain buyers would pay well for him too. Forden asked if they understood what happened to those who dared mess with nobles. The bandits didn't care. Their leader ordered everyone killed, except for the 2 brats. They charged forward, with the knights moving in to support Forden. The bandit leader led the assault. His sword was knocked aside. A knight's lance struck him, forcing the weapon from his hand. A flash of steel followed. Forden's blade swept through the air and took the man's head clean off. Forden reassured Julia that everything was under control. Blood poured from the fallen bandits. Forden shouted for Lucas to take Julia and run. Then a horrifying scream echoed. Several knights were engulfed in flames. The attack came from a man wearing an eye patch. Forden was shocked. There was a mage among them. He immediately ordered the children to flee into the forest. In that brief distraction, he was stabbed. Blood sprayed everywhere. Lucas quickly covered Julia's eyes, panic tightening his chest as he watched Forden stagger. But our butler didn't let himself fall. Even if his body was trembling, he still wanted to hold these bandits off. The mage raged over his fallen companion and prepared to burn them all alive. Even wounded, Forden resolved to protect the young master and young lady at any cost. Lucas knew Forden was only a level 2 martial artist. There was no way he could defeat a mage. Lucas had wanted to keep his true strength hidden, but Forden had treated him with more kindness than anyone except his parents. He was family. Lucas couldn't stand by and watch his family die. Julia noticed his clenched fists. He told her to hide while he went to help Forden. She looked at him with worry, but she nodded and obeyed without hesitation. Then Lucas sprinted back toward Forden. Forden managed to take down one bandit. After that, he could barely stay on his feet. Another bandit tried to stab him from behind. Blood burst into the air. Forden turned around. The upper half of the attacker's body was gone. The remaining bandits panicked, shouting in fear and confusion. One by one, their heads exploded. It happened in rapid succession, as if invisible stones were smashing through them with terrifying force. Someone stood nearby, gripping several rocks. It was Lucas. He felt relieved. Raising Gale Strike to level 4 by knocking birds out of the sky had paid off. Dealing with level 1 bandits was effortless. The mage grew furious, scanning the scene, as headless corpses littered the ground. He refused to believe they had died instantly. He formed a massive magic circle and declared he would take the old man with him. A gigantic fireball formed. Forden didn't even have the strength to dodge. Still, he felt thankful. Whoever intervened had saved the children. That alone was enough. Then, to his shock, Lucas stepped in front of him. Lucas punched straight into the fireball, dispersing the flames in an instant. Forden froze. He stared at the young master in disbelief. The mage was equally stunned. His spell had been completely erased. Even so, the mage sneered and prepared another spell, Ice Snake. Lucas rushed forward and calmly declared that this would be the man's end. Lucas's punch detonated in a blinding flash as it smashed into the mage. The impact was so violent it felt as if the air itself shattered. The mage's body exploded and vanished, reduced to nothing but mist. Nothing remained to fall. Forden stood there in shock, unable to speak. A child killing a high-level mage so easily was beyond reason. Lucas simply said it seemed he had some talent for martial arts. Overwhelmed with relief, Forden broke down in tears. Then an ominous presence washed over them. Something behind Forden began to move. Flesh twisted and reshaped itself, forming a grotesque monster with a ripped, sinewy body and jagged bone-like spikes tearing through its skin. Its skull-like face held hollow black sockets and a single glowing purple eye, radiating a brutal, nightmarish aura. The bizarre creature finally spoke. It kept repeating one word. Die. 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 Lucas froze for a second. He didn't want Julia to see something that horrifying, so he knew he had to end this fast. The moment it swung its blade-like hands, Lucas sprang upward and cleared its reach. He dropped down and slammed a punch into its head. Then Lucas stiffened. A purple light flashed. Then chains burst out from the creature's body. The chains latched onto the corpses, and the monster dragged them in and ate them. Lucas stared, shaken, and demanded to know what that thing even was. A triangle mark appeared in its eyes. Lucas's stomach sank. That mark, it had to be the one controlling the dead. It swallowed the corpses completely. Then it lowered its stance, ready to attack again. His normal hits weren't working, so Lucas decided to use something else. The creature's body twisted, multiple hands surfaced from its torso, and it sprinted at him. Lucas rushed forward too, fists glowing with golden light, clearly about to drive a brutal punch straight through it. He activated Explosive Aura Palm. A blinding golden surge erupted from Lucas, a straight blast that ripped across the ground. For a second, the monster was nothing but a dark silhouette, drowned inside the light. Its body started to break apart. Piece by piece, it disintegrated under the warm glow, until there was nothing left but ash. When it was over, Lucas dropped onto the grass. He exhaled hard. Then Julia called his name. She ran to him and threw her arms around him. She told him he was amazing for beating all the bad guys. Forden just stood there, completely dumbfounded by what he had seen. Then Lucas heard something nearby. A horse let out a loud, panicked sound. It was pulling a cart, carrying a woman who was tied up with her mouth covered. Lucas went rigid the moment he saw her. Meanwhile, deep inside a dark territory, corpses hung upside down like decorations. The woman who had emerged from the statue earlier was bathing in blood, drinking it like water. She learned that number 44 had been eliminated. Her eyes narrowed, wondering who could have done it, but she didn't dwell on it. Restoring her power mattered more than anything else. Back with our MC. Under the night sky, Julia learned the woman's name was Maya Rasta. Forden frowned. He felt like he'd heard that name before. Julia felt the same way. Lucas explained it. The Rasta family and the Ryan family were both noble houses that lived near Daku town. Julia asked Maya how she ended up getting attacked by bandits. Maya's eyes turned teary. Then she explained that a few hours ago, bandits suddenly appeared and attacked their carriage. Her guards were killed one after another. Her attendant maid was brutally murdered while trying to shield her. It didn't matter how many times Maya shouted that she was a noble. The bandits stared at her like she was prey. She revealed their real goal, to kidnap noble children. Julia hugged her and told her it was okay now because the bandits were all dead. Lucas couldn't even find words. Later that night, Forden told him that Maya and Julia had already gone to rest. Then he asked Lucas what he thought about what Maya said earlier. Lucas said it sounded like those bandits were professionals. Forden agreed and said they were probably experienced, targeting noble sons and daughters for a long time. Lucas kept thinking about it. Bandits who could use magic, and that bizarre power that could control the dead. Then Forden suddenly had a realization. He said it felt like a demon was pulling the strings. He promised Lucas he would report everything to the master immediately, so Lucas didn't have to worry. And if they reported Maya's kidnapping to the Rasta family, they could also secure their cooperation. Lucas liked that plan. Then he told Forden he had a suggestion too, something to avoid even more trouble. The next day, near the border region of the Carmina Empire, they reached Daku town. Inside the carriage, someone announced they were canceling the plan to stop and sightsee. Julia immediately looked upset, but Lucas explained why. Some of those bandits from yesterday could still be in town. For safety, it was better to head straight to the Magic Academy. Lucas told her to understand. It was for their safety. Maya agreed, but Julia looked like she was about to cry. So Lucas quickly came up with a compromise. He knew she wanted to visit the gourmet street, so he promised to buy whatever she wanted when they passed by. Julia perked up instantly. Maya noticed it too. Those two clearly got along well. Then Forden informed them they had entered the town. He suggested they open the window and take a look outside. They did, and they were stunned. The streets were packed with people. Maya said it was unbelievably lively. So far, it was the biggest town she'd seen outside the capital. Lucas smiled too. He admitted it was impressive. The vibe even reminded him of the city he lived in during his past life. Then a clown suddenly popped up near their window and offered them a creepy-looking plant. It scared both girls. Right after that, they passed a pastry shop, and Julia pouted the moment she saw it. So Lucas bought snacks and small gifts for her. She even shared a donut with Maya. Lucas felt genuinely happy seeing her happy. Eventually, the carriage came to a stop. That was as far as it could go. Lucas told Forden not to worry. He would protect Julia. Julia puffed up and said she'd protect her big brother instead. Lucas played along and said he'd be counting on her, the genius mage. Julia giggled at that. Forden watched the exchange with teary eyes. Maya overheard it too, and she found Lucas interesting. Not many people would let their little sister protect them like that. They headed inside. Maya could tell both of them were kind. She was glad she met them, and when she looked at Lucas, her heart quietly skipped a beat. Also, last night in the woods, Forden finally remembered something important. He told Lucas that Maya was once his fiancée. When they were kids, the two of them were close, really close, and genuinely happy. But everything changed after the priest performed the judgment demon. Lucas was cast aside. The priest declared Lucas had no gift for magic, and the engagement was broken off. Allen Magic Academy, located south of Daku town, was one of the 3 most famous schools in the Carmina Empire. Every freshman had to take an exam 1 year after enrolling. Based on the results, they'd be sorted into special departments depending on their aptitude. Earth, fire, wind, and water. If a student survived all 6 years and graduated, they'd earn official qualifications as a mage. Of course, there were exceptions for geniuses. Any student who passed the mage certification exam while studying there could graduate early without completing all 6 years. Lucas explained all of this to Julia as they walked through the plaza. He noticed her face right away. She was pouting because she wanted to take the entrance exam together with Maya. But Maya had already taken her exam first thing in the morning, escorted by her family. Now that she was back with them, she shouldn't be in danger anymore. Lucas cheered Julia up. He told her that if they both passed, they'd be classmates, and they could see Maya every day. So he urged her to focus on her own entrance exam first. Julia finally calmed down, and Lucas asked where the registration area was. As they walked, Julia drew attention everywhere. People whispered because she was cute, and they guessed she was around 12. Some of them also noticed Lucas and stared a little too long. Others looked jealous that he had such a cute little sister. Then someone suddenly called out to Julia. It was Mina, the vice president of the Allen Magic Academy Student Council. Mina smirked and asked if Julia had snuck in just to follow her big brother. Julia shook her head and said she was there to take the entrance exam with her brother. Mina froze. Then she remembered something. There was a girl an elite class had personally sent an offer to. That memory made her smile. She asked, "Are you Julia Ryan, from the Ryan family?" Julia blinked, confused. She asked how Mina knew her name. Mina didn't answer. She just said, "I'll tell you later." Then she immediately escorted her toward the registration area. Lucas followed behind them, starting to feel like he was invisible. Julia told Mina to wait, because her brother had to register too. Mina flinched like she totally forgot Lucas existed, but she quickly recovered and said she already knew. Lucas was applying for the martial arts department. The moment people heard that, the area erupted. They couldn't believe someone still trained in martial arts, let alone someone who came to Allen Magic Academy for it. To them, it sounded like a joke. They laughed. They looked down on him. One of them even muttered that a martial artist was only slightly more useful than a magic beast. Lucas saw the contempt in their eyes and understood something immediately. Even inside the academy, it was the same. Mages truly believed they were nobler than martial artists. Hearing this, Julia became furious, but Lucas didn't care. To him, they sounded like trash pickers from the slums talking big. He knew the only people who acted like this were weak losers like Jeremy, or monsters who thought bullying made them powerful. In Lucas's eyes, they were insects. If it weren't for his parents' good intentions, he wouldn't even waste time stepping into a dump like this. Mina watched his expression closely. She looked guilty, like she blamed herself for saying martial arts department too loudly. So she quickly told Lucas that once he finished registering, he should come with them. She would personally guide him to the exam hall. Lucas was surprised. She was one of the only people who didn't look at him with prejudice. He thanked her. At the entrance, students lined up in a long row. Mina told them to check in with the student council members at the door. After that, each examinee received an emblem. Their exam number was stored inside it, so they had to wear it when entering the hall. The entrance exam had 3 parts. First, measuring magic potential using the magic light. Second, a compatibility test, where they would interact with spirits of different attributes. And third, a destructive power test, where they would attack a dummy and get scored. Lucas asked if the martial arts applicants did the same process. Mina nodded. Yes, every department took the exact same test. Lucas didn't think it was because the academy cared about fairness. He thought it was because that they were too lazy to design a real test for martial artists. That only fueled him more. He swore to prove the power of a martial artist and crush their prejudice in front of everyone. At the potential measurement station, an old man stood near the magic light and announced the first test. He told them to place a hand on the magic light one at a time. Then the old man noticed Lucas. His eyes widened. In his whole life, he claimed he had never seen something like this. He even called it a 1-in-1,000-year phenomenon. Then the score appeared. 0. The old man said that with a score like that, Lucas wouldn't get anywhere, not even in the martial arts department. The hall erupted with laughter. Students mocked him openly. Even the martial arts kid before him had scored a 1. Lucas could only sigh. Then the next student stepped up, and the entire crowd suddenly went silent when the magic light burst into a deep purple glow. It was Julia. Purple meant her potential was 7 out of 10, high enough to make her a top-class student among this year's examinees. The crowd started buzzing like crazy. Lucas just stared. He couldn't believe everyone was getting so worked up over something like that. To Lucas, it was obvious. These people didn't know the first thing about real power. He shouted at Julia not to hold back. He cheered loudly for her. The instructor tensed up the moment he realized Julia might still be suppressing her power. So, Julia released more. The orb's glow shifted, brightening into a golden yellow light. It blazed like a miniature sun. The instructor's eyes went wide. Golden light meant she was just a hair away from the maximum score of 10. He'd only seen that level once before, 2 years ago, from a student who became a legend on campus. But Julia was much younger than that student had been. The instructor was stunned, and genuinely impressed. Then, Julia finished the test. She ran straight to her big brother, smiling like she'd just won a prize. The crowd's attention immediately snapped to Lucas. Julia hugged him tight and asked if she did great. Lucas gently patted her head and told her she'd become an archmage someday. Behind them, one student whispered that Julia was a genius, and Lucas was a worthless piece of trash. The guy next to him instantly covered his mouth and hissed at him to stop. He warned him, "Do you have any idea what Julia would do if she heard you insult her brother?" Then he pushed him away and told him to go mock someone else. In his mind, it wasn't worth making an enemy out of a genius, just to laugh at some loser. Lucas heard it all, and he stayed calm, because this was exactly what he wanted. As long as Julia showed off her talent, no one would dare bother him too much. That meant he could finally have a peaceful school life. All the hard work he put in over the last 3 years, all the effort spent strengthening Julia's talent, it was finally going to pay off. Soon they moved to the second test, the spirit hut. Lucas had been waiting for this part for a long time, because this was where all his preparation would truly matter. They stepped into the next exam venue, at the compatibility test site. Spirits of different elements floated through the air. They quickly caught the students' attention when they began circling Julia. She played with them casually. Everyone was shocked. One student had even received a level 6 blessing from the wind god, yet not a single wind spirit approached him. Meanwhile, spirits of every element gathered around her. The students immediately assumed she had near-perfect compatibility with all elements. They whispered that the girl's talent was terrifying. Lucas felt relieved. His custom skill, Mage Key Art, was quietly boosting Julia's potential. Even though she was only level 2, it was already more than enough to pass the entrance exam. The instructor announced her result. 9.6 compatibility, the highest among all examinees. He congratulated her, and she politely thanked him. Then she suddenly turned her head and glared. Some of the other students were trying to get closer, but their eyes made their intentions obvious. She quickly hugged her brother and buried her face in his chest. He asked her what was wrong. She whispered, asking why those people were looking at her like that. She was scared. He told her it couldn't be helped. She was a genius, and from now on, people would stare at her even more. He told her not to worry about what others thought and to slowly get used to it. She realized he was right and made up her mind to grow stronger so she could protect him. He encouraged her to keep going. Deep down, though, he hadn't expected her to be affected by the attention. He realized he also needed to help build her mental toughness. Nearby, two men whispered to each other. One of them muttered that Julia should have been royalty class, but since her brother was useless, it made sense. The other asked what the brother's compatibility score was. They assumed it was 0, just like before. But when Lucas entered the hall, all the spirits scattered away from him, their faces filled with disgust. Then something strange happened after the first test. The moment Lucas stepped outside, one fire spirit suddenly lost its arm. The man who saw it almost wet himself. His friend couldn't believe it. He said it must have been a mistake. Spirits were tiny, after all. Lucas heard everything. He didn't expect anyone to witness it. It had happened during the second test. Maybe it was because he had been forsaken by the fire god. Still, that fire spirit's behavior had been especially hostile. When the test ended and Lucas was about to leave, the spirit spat flames straight at him. It clearly held a grudge after nearly being killed earlier. Lucas felt the same way. He picked up a small pebble and quietly flicked it, smashing the spirit's arm. He didn't like a mere servant of the fire god acting so arrogant around him. Back to the present time, he took Julia's hand and led her toward the final test. He asked if she was confident she could take first place again. She smiled and said, as long as he didn't go all out, she'd be fine. He replied that he wasn't planning to get serious anyway. He intended for her to protect him. At the magic destruction power test site, metal dummies were placed everywhere. As they entered, they heard a student complaining that the genius girl had taken first place. He said he'd vent his frustration on the dummy. Others wondered if the genius could actually break one. Someone argued that it was impossible. The dummies were made from special metal reinforced with defensive magic. They could withstand any attack below curse rank. No one believed a kid her age could unleash a curse rank attack. Lucas studied the dummy and noted how solid it looked. He decided it was the perfect chance to test his level 6 skills. Getting to use expensive equipment like this made him think that coming to school wasn't half bad. Suddenly, they heard someone yelling for people to stop shoving. A woman was screaming for everyone to get in line. She was shouting at a woman with long black hair. She said that anyone without talent should move to the back. She called her useless and ordered her to get lost. The long black-haired woman slowly turned and glared at her, activating a technique through her eyes. The shouting woman felt her chest tighten as if her heart was being squeezed. Then the black-haired woman calmly walked past her, gave her a cold stare, and scoffed. She headed straight toward Julia. She looked down at her and asked if she was the one who scored 9.6 on the compatibility test. Her presence was overwhelming. Julia got scared. She hid behind her brother. She tugged his sleeve and whispered that the woman was scary. Lucas asked who she was. She introduced herself as Iwa Miranda, the granddaughter of Duke Miranda. The Miranda family was one of the 3 great families of the Northern Empire, a clan that had once produced a legendary mage. Lucas's mother, Catherine, came from the Miranda family. That meant the girl was the daughter of his mother's younger brother, Sayan Miranda. Lucas asked how old she was now. She said she was 15 and glared at him. He casually told her to stop glaring since they were cousins. That only made her angrier. She had never heard of having a cousin like him and thought he was mocking her. So she decided to humiliate him in front of everyone. A star-shaped light appeared in her eyes as she targeted both of them, sending a telepathic command for them to strip and embarrass themselves. Lucas simply smiled. Julia didn't react at all. To them, she looked no different from an angry black cat. Lucas laughed and scolded her for using mental magic on a relative she had just met. It made him wonder what kind of education the Miranda family gave their children. She froze. The spell hadn't worked at all, even though it was her strongest magic. In Lucas's mind, it was ridiculous that she thought such flimsy mental magic could control a martial artist with an unshakable will. The instructor called out for Lucas to get ready. It was his turn. Before he left, Iwa shouted at Julia. She warned her not to get too proud, saying she would be the one to take first place in this test. Lucas glanced at the scoreboard. Iwa was ranked second, while Julia held first place. She was clearly declaring war. For the sake of his peaceful life, he wasn't going to let anyone take Julia's spot. He casually handed Julia a candy. She happily ate it before even asking what it was. The moment she tasted it, her soul nearly left her body. She accused him of lying when she realized it wasn't candy at all, but an extremely bitter medicine. He apologized and explained that it was a special magic potion made from rare ingredients. She would feel its effects soon. Lucas was called to enter. He promised to improve the taste next time before walking away. Julia cried after him, saying he'd said that before and she didn't believe him anymore. Lucas stepped onto the arena and walked toward the instructor and the metal dummy. He was told to attack the dummy with all his power so they could evaluate his destructive ability and give him a final grade. When he was told to begin, he calmly said that he couldn't use magic. The instructor looked confused. Lucas smiled and asked if he could just punch it instead. The other students laughed at Lucas for taking the destruction test by simply punching the dummy. They thought it was barbaric. But that wasn't surprising since they believed all martial artists were just brainless brutes. They expected him to end up with a broken hand. Julia shot them a sharp glare. Their voices immediately dropped. They had forgotten that the genius sister was standing right there. She pouted. If her brother hadn't told her to behave at school, she would have kicked their asses herself. Iwa asked if Julia's brother really couldn't use magic. Her mental magic hadn't worked on him at all, so she found it hard to believe he was completely magicless. Julia replied that her brother definitely couldn't use magic, but he was still an amazing person. No one in the world had the right to make fun of him. Iwa thought there was a limit to how strong a martial artist could be. She suspected Julia was just being fooled by her brother. Suddenly, an explosion echoed through the arena. It startled her. Everyone froze, confused about what had just happened. 2 minutes earlier, Lucas asked if a single hit would be enough. The instructor replied that they didn't care how he attacked. Lucas nodded and prepared himself. Martial arts skills grew exponentially every 3 levels. His strongest skill, Flash, had received a huge speed boost at level 3. Now that it was level 6, he expected its power to be on an entirely different level. He planted his foot and charged forward. Power surged around his fist. He aimed straight for the metal dummy's head. The dummy was blasted away on impact. It rolled across the ground before crashing to a stop. It had flown an incredible distance. When the dust settled, a massive hole could be seen punched straight through its chest. All of that from a single punch. Iwa felt her heart tighten. She muttered that his speed rivaled high-level wind magic. The dummy glowed gold, meaning the attack had reached curse rank power. The students who had mocked him earlier were completely stunned. They had assumed he was just another useless martial artist. Iwa realized she might be the only one who truly noticed Lucas's strength. From his actions, she could tell he was deliberately hiding it. That realization made her uneasy. The instructor told Lucas he was lucky. It was the first time a dummy had been destroyed in over a decade. He awarded him a perfect score. Lucas thanked him and asked if he should help clean up the fallen dummy. The instructor declined, saying it was too heavy and he would move it with magic. Lucas flashed a peace sign at the camera. Julia saw it on the large screen and returned the gesture. He had avoided a 0 score and successfully hidden his real strength. All thanks to everyone underestimating him. As the exams continued, fewer and fewer students paid attention to Lucas's destructive power. However, everyone became completely captivated by Julia's true talent. She cast her spell beside another student, startling them. Lightning crackled along her staff. A massive magic circle spread across the ground as she commanded lightning to descend. A thunderous bolt struck. They immediately recognized the red lightning, second only to golden lightning in power. Now they understood why lightning magic was considered the strongest offensive element. The students were left in awe after witnessing the strength of an honor student. Many silently vowed to reach her level by the time they graduated. But they noticed that Julia was just sitting there. They wondered if her own lightning had shocked her so badly that she couldn't even stand. Julia herself was stunned. The instructor announced her score, 9.5 points, and called the next student. Then, after the exam, Julia told her brother that she had used lightning descends, and suddenly a red lightning bolt fell out of nowhere. It completely freaked her out. Before this, even at full power, she could only produce purple lightning. This time, the lightning felt far more active, almost alive. She found it strange. Lucas felt a stab of guilt. It was because of the potion he had given her, but he chose not to say anything. In their world, mages and martial artists each had their own potion-making paths. Mages brewed magic potions. Martial artists refined elixirs. Magic potions required a medium, while refined elixirs could be absorbed directly by the body. In the past, many kinds of elixirs had existed. But as martial arts declined, elixir refining became incredibly difficult. In the modern era, very few martial artists could create a mage essence elixir, the kind that boosted Julia's power. That was because elixir refining had to reach level 6. At present, there was only one other person besides Lucas who could make it. The only known level 6 martial artist, Duke Retsuzan, Minister of the Imperial Ministry of Martial Arts. Rumors said that even top-tier mages bowed before him, begging for his elixirs. If anyone discovered Lucas could make something that valuable, it would become a massive headache. He had to keep it an absolute secret. After all, his elixir refining was already at level 6. Later that day, they sat together on a bench. Julia asked if it was finally over. Lucas told her it would take just a bit longer. Once the class assignments were posted, they could return to the dorms and rest. Mina suddenly called out to them. Lucas asked what she was doing there. She explained that she was in charge of posting the class assignments. She told them that Julia had taken first place in the elite class, while Lucas ranked first in the martial arts department. She congratulated both of them. Julia beamed when she heard she placed first in the elite class. She was thrilled that she had made it. Lucas praised her, saying she was amazing and that he'd be counting on her from now on. Mina asked which department Julia wanted to join next year. There were 5 special departments: Earth, Fire, Wind, Water, and the Special Department. 1 year after enrollment, all students would be tested and officially assigned. Julia thought for a moment. Based on her attributes and the Wind God's blessing, she chose the Wind Department. Mina's eyes lit up. She happily told Julia that she would be waiting for her there. Lucas noticed how actively Mina was already scouting talented students. Then, Mina offered to escort Julia to the girls' dormitory. Julia waved goodbye to her brother. Lucas asked Mina to take good care of his sister. After that, he headed toward the martial arts department. Students crowded around the results board. Just as expected, Julia's name was at the very top. Someone muttered that all the other freshmen that year were nothing but props, meant to make the genius look even better. It sucked to be them. Because Julia ranked first, Iowa lost. She clenched her fists and swore that one day she would take first place herself. She wanted to prove it, to Lucas, and to Julia. Back to our MC. Lucas looked disappointed. He knew the martial arts department wasn't exactly a priority, but the dorm was so run down that he wondered if anyone actually lived there. It looked like it could collapse at any moment. On the bright side, a place like this would be quiet. It was perfect for the peaceful school life he wanted. But the moment he stepped inside, a perky, silver-haired man greeted him enthusiastically. He already knew Lucas, the guy who took first place in the martial arts department. He introduced himself as Kai Taroy, a fellow student in the same department. He flashed a bright, confident smile and said it was nice to meet him. Lucas didn't reply and simply walked past him. He headed to the registration table. Kai followed closely behind and excitedly told him that punching the dummy and sending it flying had been amazing. Lucas replied calmly that he had just gotten lucky. The instructor informed Lucas that his room was on the second floor and handed him the key to room 205. Kai glanced at it and immediately said they were roommates. Lucas groaned when he saw the hallway. It was old and filthy. Kai led him to room 205. When they opened the door, 2 people were already inside. Kai froze in surprise. The 2 introduced themselves. The green-haired man was Collins, and the blonde was Sharp. From now on, they would all be roommates. Kai looked visibly disturbed. The room was absolutely filthy. He covered his nose and complained loudly, saying it was worse than a pigsty. When he spotted a spider, he shrieked and jumped back. He asked Lucas if he seriously planned to live in a place like this. In his head, Lucas noted that Kai was a germ-obsessed pretty boy. Kai suddenly pulled out a gold coin, instantly grabbing the attention of Collins and Sharp. He said he would give it to whoever cleaned the room. They stared at it in disbelief. That single coin was worth more than a month's salary. Lucas wasn't surprised. Kai was clearly the heir of one of the 3 great noble families of the imperial capital. Collins and Sharp immediately got to work cleaning. Still, Lucas couldn't help thinking that no one had warned him he'd be living in a dump like this. Kai tried to reassure him, saying that since this was the famous Allen Magic Academy, the living conditions would surely improve over time. Lucas nodded, trying to believe him. Kai muttered that the place felt more like a jail cell. Another spider crawled out. Kai instantly hid behind Lucas. Lucas warned him that if he kept talking like that, the student council might drag him away. Eventually, the cleaning was finished. Kai praised Collins and Sharp for their hard work. The room was simple, but now it was spotless. Kai handed out the rewards. He declared that from now on, as roommates, he would protect them. Each of them received a gold coin, even Lucas. Lucas smiled. Despite Kai's arrogant personality, he couldn't bring himself to dislike him. He was generous, almost like the Benzaiten of the Arcanus continent. The dorm supervisor arrived and handed them their uniforms. The entrance ceremony was about to begin in the main hall, so they were told to change quickly and head over. Kai was horrified by the tattered uniforms. He shouted that wearing something like that would make him look like a homeless bum. Deep down, Collins and Sharp thought they weren't that bad. Lucas told Kai that everything would be explained during the ceremony. He had also heard that the academy used a reward-based system. If students earned enough merit, they could request better treatment. Even improved uniforms. That was enough to convince Kai to put it on. He urged everyone to hurry to the hall. Lucas quietly noted how gullible he was. At the hall, they entered wearing their worn-out uniforms. Lucas scanned the room, and something immediately caught his attention. The hall was already filled with students. Collins commented on how grand and beautiful it looked. Kai scoffed, saying it was nothing compared to his own home. Lucas spotted her. The elite class uniforms were on a completely different level. The martial arts department seats were all the way at the back. Kai suggested that if Lucas wanted to say hi to his sister, he should do it now. Lucas shook his head and said it was fine. He just wanted to take his seat. Deep down, though, he felt proud. The elite uniform looked great on Julia. The distance to their seats was ridiculous. It made Kai mutter that the martial arts department was clearly being discriminated against. They sat down. Lucas noticed a woman seated in front of him. Suddenly, the flame in the lamp gathered at its center, forming the shape of a flower bud. A man shaped the fire into a blooming flame flower and held it in his hand. It was fire mold, level 6. A figure stepped out from the flaming bud. He announced that the students should feel honored, because today, he, the student council president and a future great mage, would be introducing the Academy's point system. His name was Theodore Folamel. The girls immediately began fangirling. He looked cool, and their excitement doubled when they learned he was a level 6 mage. Theodore continued. At Allen Magic Academy, the point system was the foundation of everything. Magic skills, rare books, tamed magic beasts, rare materials, even guidance from great masters. Any learning resource they could imagine could be obtained with points. There were many ways to earn points, however, labor paid extremely poorly, only 1 to 5 points per hour. It was far more efficient to earn points by participating in departmental events. For current students, guiding freshmen today was one of the best earning opportunities. Lucas thought of how Mina had guided Julia. Now it made sense. Theodore added that joining the student council provided a stable monthly income. The president earned 500 points per month. The vice president received 200, and regular members earned 100. Finally, he mentioned a high-risk task: monster hunting. Behind the academy lay the Magic Beast Mountain Range, notorious for being infested with dangerous creatures. Students could hunt magic beasts and exchange the materials for points. That immediately caught Lucas's attention. To him, it sounded like a training ground made specifically for him. A few hours later, Kai was sleeping soundly. An incense burned quietly beside his bed. Lucas slipped out of the room. Thanks to the tranquil incense, his roommates were completely knocked out. Finally, he could head to the Magic Beast Mountain Range. The martial arts department building sat at the very back of the academy, which meant the Magic Beast Mountain Range was right beyond the wall. He jumped over it, then crossed several rooftops. He moved closer to the outer boundary. Eventually, he slipped out and headed deep into the forest. The first monster rushed him. It was a purple frog with a horn on its head and 3 spikes on its back. Lucas leaped over it. The monster panicked when Lucas grabbed its horn. He slammed it into the ground, causing a violent explosion. Just like that, the monster was defeated. The poor creature lay there pitifully, its horn torn off. It was a giant, black-horned frog. Its horn was poisonous and commonly used for brewing magic potions. Lucas kept it. It would be worth a decent amount of points. He had heard that Allen Magic Academy housed legendary martial arts manuals in its archives. He needed to stockpile points if he wanted to get his hands on the skill rumored to have been used by the martial god himself. Time was limited, so he started by locating nearby monsters. He activated a skill in his eyes. Golden ripples spread through the forest. He detected a level 1 shellmouth. He knocked it out cold with a clean hand chop. Next came a level 2 two-eyed bat. After that, a level 3 magic-crested panther. The forest was in chaos. Lucas was satisfied with the haul. He collected valuable materials for elixir refining and plenty of items he could exchange for points. Still, something felt off. The forest was too quiet. There were barely any signs of other magic beasts. That meant only one thing. A powerful monster was nearby. He focused his senses. Something sinister lurked inside a cave, a ferocious presence heavy with hunger. Lucas smiled. He was glad he found it. It was about a kilometer away, and it had noticed him too. He left his collected materials outside the cave. Then he stepped inside. Waiting for him was a level 6 Icefire wolf. Once he realized it was a wolf-type beast, everything made sense. Territorial creatures like this always ruled their domain. Instead of getting scared, our boy even smiled. And with enthusiasm, he clenched his fist. He looked forward to their dance. Out of nowhere, Lucas charged. The wolf released an icy breath to keep him at bay. Ice coated Lucas's fist. The Icefire wolf grew confident, but his punch still landed. Blood spilled from its mouth. Its body slammed into the cave floor. Lucas knew that if he had trained a bit more, he could have blown its leg clean off. He shook the ice from his fist and beckoned the beast to stand again. He knew it wasn't finished yet. The Icefire wolf coughed up blood. Fire gathered inside its mouth. Then it unleashed a massive blast. Flames filled the cave. Everything erupted. The wolf let out a furious howl. It never noticed Lucas slipping behind it. And when it finally did, it was already too late. Lucas pulled back his fist, ready to deliver a devastating punch. He struck the Icefire wolf square in the chest. The impact made it vomit a mouthful of blood. Its body was blasted straight into the cave wall. It rolled across the ground before crashing to a stop. Lucas realized that the beast could freely control 2 opposing elements, fire and ice. The wolf was still conscious, but it no longer had the strength to stand. Terror filled its eyes as it watched Lucas walk toward it. Lucas calmly remarked that it was a rare magic beast. The Icefire wolf looked even more terrified. It exhaled a mix of ice and fire, the intensity rising as it tried to stop Lucas from getting closer. The clash of elements created thick steam. Lucas swung his arm, and the steam scattered. The Icefire wolf forced itself up. Then it ran. Lucas wasn't about to let it escape. He caught up, and grabbed its tail, then smashed it straight into the ground. Fighting a massive magic beast like this felt good. Lucas figured it would be worth a huge amount of points. To his surprise, the wolf suddenly twisted and hurled him into the wall. Lucas landed safely. The Icefire wolf followed up with a blast of fire. Our MC dodged by, leaping onto the ceiling. Another wave of fireballs came flying. He pushed through the flames and charged. His punch slammed the ice firewolf into the ground. Lucas threw another punch. This time, the impact exploded into a blinding flash of light. The ground split apart as the shockwave ripped through the cave. The ice firewolf wondered if this was the end. Forced into a corner, it used its last resort. Its red paws suddenly swelled in size. Lucas barely jumped away in time. Then it released two glowing orbs, one of ice, one of fire. It pushed them toward our MC. He wondered if it was the beast core. In this world, some magic beasts were born with a beast core inside their bodies. It was an extremely rare material that contained all of the beast's power. If even a single drop of human blood touched the core, the magic beast would become that person's tamed beast. Lucas asked if it wanted to become his tamed beast. The ice firewolf let out a weak whine. Its body language showed complete surrender. Our MC, of course, accepted. This was far beyond what he expected. Even powerful mages rarely possessed a level 6 tamed beast. He judged that the wolf wasn't very intelligent. Truly powerful magic beasts were proud and would never submit to a human so easily. He cut his finger and let a drop of blood fall onto the core. Then he returned it to the beast. The ice fire wolf swallowed it and softly called him Master. Our MC froze in shock. He tried to look around, wondering where the voice was coming from. The beast told him it was the one speaking. Lucas couldn't believe he could actually understand it. He named the Icefire Wolf Ool. Lucas wondered if that meant Ool's territory now belonged to him as well. He also grew curious about what kind of loot Ool had gathered from its hunts. Ool seemed to understand. It gently booped Lucas on the cheek and led him deeper into the cave. Lucas liked how intelligent it was. They went farther inside. Bats hung upside down from the ceiling. A foul smell filled the air. Lucas spotted a full pelt from a level 6 magic beast, bones from an iron arm monkey, and piles of gemstones. His mouth watered at the sight of the treasure trove. He started inspecting everything, but Ool told him it wasn't its treasure. It pointed at a large slab of meat nearby. Lucas barely paid attention. His eyes were locked on the beast cores scattered around. Most were level 3 or higher, and there were even 2 level 6 cores. Ool explained that it had already eaten all the water and fire attribute beast cores. To level up, a magic beast had to consume beast cores at or above its own level. That meant Ool had defeated at least 2 opponents as strong as himself. Lucas rewarded Ool for a job well done. Ool loved it. The smell alone made it happy. Its wounds slowly began to heal. Lucas explained that it was a healing potion that worked on magic beasts as well. He told Ool to recover and guard the treasure. Ool was thrilled to receive its first mission. It proudly told him he could trust it. That took care of his next objective. Our MC simply smiled. The next morning, at the classroom building, everyone was finding their seats. Lucas was still sleepy after pulling an all-nighter. Thanks to the sleeping incense, he didn't feel exhausted. He tried to count the treasure he had gained, but Ool kept distracting him. Then the bell rang. A few minutes passed. The students began wondering where the teacher was. They had expected the instructor to be waiting for the first class, but the room remained empty. Kai muttered that maybe the academy had forgotten to assign a teacher to the martial arts department. Our MC said that was impossible. Footsteps soon approached. Someone staggered in and tossed an empty liquor bottle onto the floor, complaining that he had drunk too much. The door creaked open. The students froze. A sloppy, unfocused man stood there. He introduced himself as Shigart, the person in charge of the martial arts department. He announced that class was about to start. Our MC was definitely not pleased. Shigart wrote his name on the board. He yawned as he lazily held up a book. Kai was already getting irritated. He leaned in and whispered to Lucas, asking if that sloppy man was really their homeroom teacher. He didn't look the part at all. Suddenly, something smacked Kai on the forehead. He yelped in pain, leaving the entire class confused. Lucas caught the movement. It was fast. From that alone, he guessed Shigart was at least a level 5 or even level 6 martial artist. Shigart coldly told them that from now on, no one was allowed to talk without his permission. Then he began taking attendance. He called Tishy first, then Lucas. Our MC remembered her from the entrance ceremony. While everyone else had been noisy and restless back then, she had sat quietly the entire time. That calm focus had left an impression on him. A short while later, attendance was finished. Shigart was about to start the lesson when he suddenly realized he'd forgotten the textbooks. He appointed Tishy as the class representative and told her to go to his office to fetch them. Tishy froze, then blushed. She asked if he really meant her. Shigart confirmed it without hesitation. Kai immediately protested. He said class representatives should be chosen fairly through competition. He bragged that with his family background and abilities, he was clearly the best candidate. Then, he took another hit. Shigart reminded him, once more, now with conviction, that speaking without permission was not allowed. The chalk in Shigart's hand crumbled to dust. Then he instructed Tishy that after handing out the textbooks, she was to lead the class in self-study. Tishy looked delighted. She had passed the entrance exam, and now she had even been chosen as class representative. This felt like a chance to change her fate. Kai rubbed the swelling on his head and cursed under his breath, calling Shigart an abusive bastard. Lucas quietly agreed that something about their teacher felt off. Kai said they should complain to the administration and get him fired. Lucas noticed the way Shigart shifted his weight. It looked like the posture of someone who had suffered a serious injury. He couldn't help wondering how strong the man had been before that. Our MC then clarified that he never said anything about complaining. Kai scoffed and questioned his manhood, saying he must be scared. To Lucas, someone that strong was interesting. He hadn't expected school to turn out this entertaining. A few hours later, outside the cafeteria, Kai and Lucas walked together. Kai complained non-stop, saying all they did was self-study because of that lousy teacher. He hated how irresponsible Shigart was for choosing a class representative on a whim. He called him the worst. Lucas barely listened. The moment he spotted Julia, he headed straight toward her. He gently patted her head and asked how her first class went. She happily told him her teacher was Miss Linda, who was super kind. She had even encouraged Julia to aim for class representative next week. Kai muttered that class representatives were usually chosen a week after school started. That made Julia curious. She asked if the martial arts department had already picked one and wondered if Lucas had been chosen. Lucas told her it wasn't him. He then invited her to lunch, saying he'd heard the food was pretty good. Julia's eyes lit up with excitement. Kai shouted after them, telling them to wait. At Allen Magic Academy, even meals were tied to the point exchange system. New students with no points were allowed to exchange cash for points, but only once. On top of that, each department had a different exchange rate. The food looked amazing and smelled incredible. Julia shared her meal with her brother. Kai grew increasingly irritated. He stared at his tray in despair. They had both paid 1 coin, yet elite class students received 100 points worth of food, while the martial arts department only got 10. He called it complete bullshit. Earlier, when he complained, the teacher bluntly told him that the martial arts department rate was fixed at 10 points. If he had a problem with it, he could leave. Even the instructors openly discriminated against martial artists. They told him that nobility meant nothing inside the academy. Students without talent just had to work harder and save up points. Kai felt like he had lost his human rights the moment he enrolled. Julia quietly shared her food with him. Kai was deeply moved. He thought she was unbelievably kind. In Lucas's mind, Kai was being a little dramatic. They focused on eating. Then Maya approached. She greeted Lucas and Julia. Julia invited her to sit with them, but Maya said she had already eaten. Instead, she handed Julia a small bag of baked cookies to thank her for what happened the other day. Little sis happily accepted them. Lucas tried one and said it was delicious. Maya looked genuinely happy. Julia then commented that she was a great cook. Maya blushed. Kai leaned in and asked for one too. He took a bite and widened his eyes. He said it was no ordinary cookie. It was on par with the Teroy family's special sweets. He introduced himself right away. Maya gave her name and said she was honored by the compliment. Kai teased Lucas for having such a pretty friend. In our MC's mind, there was no way he would share that she's his ex-fiancée. Soon after, Maya left. Lucas let out a quiet sigh. Just as he thought, the cafeteria was the worst place to relax. Earlier, Mina had met Julia and asked if she liked the food. She looked surprised when Lucas showed up. Not long after, Theodore arrived, and the girls immediately started squealing. He even flew in using fire magic. Lucas quickly realized he was a show-off, but in the shadows, Lucas noticed how exhausted Theodore looked. It had been a close call. He had nearly lost control of his level 6 magic. Thanks to a potion, he had barely managed to look cool in front of the underclassmen. Lucas genuinely thought Theodore was impressive. That was until he heard him muttering to himself after the entrance ceremony. Someone walked past and accidentally dropped a bottle. The sound caught Lucas's attention. He saw Shigart. That made him wonder what the man was doing here. Shigart staggered behind the school, swinging a bottle of liquor. He opened the door to a room. The people inside were annoyed that he was late again. They muttered that when he took over the martial arts department, they thought he would clean up his act. Someone replied that no one could blame him, especially after what had happened. Shigart dropped into a seat and yawned. A blonde woman watched him with concern, her brows tightly furrowed. Someone tapped their finger against the desk. They announced that the meeting would begin. An old man with a long beard spoke up. Today's agenda was the Magic Beast Taming Tournament. In the Carmina Empire, monster hordes attacked frequently. Because of that, the ability to tame multiple beasts at once was considered essential. As a result, it became an annual tradition for all freshmen at Allen Magic Academy to participate in the Magic Beast Taming Tournament. The blonde female instructor announced that they had already prepared over 2,000 level 1 magic beasts for the event. She suggested holding the tournament in 6 days, just like every other year. The professor seated across from her said that was fine, but he suggested that the martial arts department students should sit this one out. In his opinion, they stood no chance against magic beasts, so forcing them to participate would be a waste of time. Someone then slammed their hand on the table. It was Shigart. He straight up objected. The professor argued that he was only thinking of the students' safety. The blonde instructor sided with Shigart. She said that as long as they were freshmen at the academy, martial arts students should also be required to participate. Another female instructor agreed, saying all students should be treated equally. One more professor supported that stance. The man who suggested excluding them couldn't believe there were still teachers siding with Shigart, especially Linda. He realized that many of them still saw Shigart as the former level 8 powerhouse. He didn't argue further. Instead, he added that the martial arts students would probably just end up crying in fear. The headmaster made the final call. The martial arts department would participate. The meeting was soon adjourned. Afterward, the blonde instructor, Linda, was approached by a colleague who asked if she was really sure. A male instructor said Greg had a point. Another female instructor added that while she understood martial arts students needed real combat experience, the taming tournament might be too difficult for them. Linda simply smiled. She said that a long time ago, someone had told her something she never forgot. A coward who lacks the courage to overcome hardship has no right to call himself a martial artist, so any student who refused to join the tournament could quit the martial arts department on the spot. The Magic Beast taming tournament would begin in 6 days. Back in class, Shigart informed his students that after the lesson, they would head outside for practical combat training. He said he would make sure every single one of them could defeat a magic beast. Kai complained that the tournament was usually just an event to select a class representative. Since they already had one, he didn't see the point in participating. Once again, something smacked his head. Shigart told him to shut up and announced that class was starting. One student muttered that the pretty boy really knew how to piss off the teacher. Lucas thought about the upcoming practical combat training. He quietly reminded himself to be careful not to send his sparring partner flying. They immediately moved to the open training grounds and began. A long brown-haired student was suddenly launched into a tree. The one who did it was Tishy. Lucas quietly observed the training. Since everyone there had passed the entrance exam for the martial arts department, none of them were weak. Among them, Tishy stood out the most. He could tell she was the strongest one after him. He carefully observed while sending another student away. Seeing that it was getting late, Shigart called an end to the training for the day. Kai let out a sigh of relief. It was finally over. Collins told Kai that he was heading to the cafeteria and that he'd bring food back for him later. Sharp immediately asked if he had made another deal. Kai explained that he had given Collins a coin. In exchange, Collins would bring him food bought with points. Collins earned extra cash, and Kai saved his points. A win-win. Sharp looked regretful that no one had told him about such a great deal. Collins said Sharp could take the next one. Kai didn't really care who handled it, but Sharp made him promise. Lucas watched them and realized Collins was smarter than he looked. He was increasing his allowance while keeping good relationships with everyone. On the contrary, Kai thought he was the clever one and asked our MC if he agreed. He suggested Lucas learn a thing or two from him, joking that he wouldn't even charge tuition. Lucas gently brushed Kai's elbows off his shoulders. He said he appreciated the offer, but he'd pass. Kai was stunned. He assumed Lucas didn't care about points because his sister was in the elite class. But Kai had it completely wrong. Even without Julia, Lucas wasn't worried about food at all. After all, he had the bounty of nature. Smoke rose from inside a cave. Someone was roasting meat. It was our MC. If he didn't need to walk Julia back to the dorms, he would have used dinner time to train. But today, Mina had tried getting close to Julia again, so he couldn't lower his guard. If Mina showed even a hint of bad intentions, Lucas would make sure she regretted it. He noticed Ul wagging its tail. The Icefire wolf stared at the meat, drooling heavily. Lucas handed it over. The more he looked at Ul, the cuter it seemed. The wolf was overjoyed. Lucas had shared his food without asking for anything in return, making Ul think that being tamed might not be so bad after all. Lucas told the beast that after eating, it would help him train. He promised he wouldn't hurt it. Ul was terrified. In the end, Lucas did not go easy on him. Meanwhile, at the Ryan family estate, Lucas's mother stood beneath the night sky. Worry is clear on her face. Holt walked up beside her. He asked if she was thinking about the children again. She admitted that she was. There was no point hiding it from him. He told her their classes had probably already begun. Then he gently suggested that if she missed them, she should go visit. He told her that he'd be passing by Daku Town for work and could take her along. She was overjoyed at the thought of seeing them again, at Count Grindo's estate. Someone entered barefoot. The people gathered inside wore black hoods and masks. On the stage stood a naked woman, her body covered only by a black cape. She greeted Jessica as she stepped inside. She invited her to take a seat. Jessica smiled back. She had pale yellow curls and deep blue eyes. The woman presented her newest creation, Jade Dream. The moment it was consumed, the drinker's entire body would glow. Jessica accepted the glass. She then slit her wrist. Her dripping blood was collected into wine glasses, and drank it. The woman encouraged everyone to enjoy themselves. She removed her cape. Then she announced that the game had begun. A purple triangular mark with a dragon at its center appeared on her back. Jessica watched quietly. She swirled her wine glass, mixing the blood within. Later, in a bedroom, they spoke about how an 11-year-old girl had destroyed the Black Wind group. The green-haired woman and Jessica lay naked on the bed, holding each other as they talked. The girl, they said, had inherited the talents of both the Catherine and Miranda families. The green-haired woman remarked that someone at mere level 7 should not have been able to defeat them. Jessica bit her lip until it bled, forcing herself to suppress her rage. The green-haired woman told her that her child's efforts would never bear fruit. She knew exactly what Jessica wanted. She wanted Catherine and her daughter dead so she could become the Baroness. Jessica admitted it and asked what she should do. The green-haired woman smiled. She placed a triangular mark on Jessica's body. She whispered that there was something beautiful about watching a young bud wither. The next day, Tishy informed her classmates that they would be doing more practical combat training that morning. Groans filled the room. Everyone looked exhausted, dark circles heavy under their eyes. One student complained that the pain from last night was so bad, they couldn't sleep at all. Another bluntly said that Shigart was a monster. Tishy nodded. She admitted it hurt, but said it was all for the sake of getting stronger. She encouraged everyone to push through and do their best. Someone was surprised when they learned that her entire body was aching too. A few students bragged that they felt perfectly fine. They took it as proof that their bodies were tougher than everyone else's. Kai proudly claimed that was obviously the case. He boasted that he was the strongest in the class. Sharp and Collins backed him up. Lucas knew the truth. It was just the effect of the sleeping incense. Tishy noticed that the four of them looked completely fine. Their stamina was unusually high. With endurance like that, she believed they could handle even harsher training in the future. She was convinced they would grow into strong martial artists. Kai got fired up. He threw a punch. Lucas blocked it effortlessly. Kai widened his eyes when Lucas pushed him back with a single palm strike. Still, Kai managed to steady himself. Lucas rushed forward. Kai ducked just in time. Kai grinned and said he wasn't that bad. Lucas acknowledged him. Someone was watching them. Lucas felt it. A strange gaze locked onto him. Under a tree stood a thin, elderly man. Lucas wondered if he was the one staring. Kai spotted an opening and attacked. But our boy ducked again. Kai lost his balance and slammed face first into the ground. He scolded Lucas for getting distracted and demanded they keep sparring until there was a clear winner. Lucas agreed. Meanwhile, the old man walked away, laughing softly. Mina noticed him and called out, addressing him as Director Otani. She asked if he was heading back to the library and offered to escort him. He declined, saying he simply wanted to enjoy a peaceful walk. Director Otani found Lucas fascinating. He could tell the boy was hiding his true strength, and even he couldn't measure how deep it went. He made sure to remember Lucas's name. Several hours later, class finally ended. That afternoon, Shigart taught them massage techniques. He said it was important, so everyone had to learn it. He demonstrated using Collins as the model, and Collins immediately let out a loud moan of relief. The effect was shocking. The soreness in everyone's muscles disappeared almost instantly. Lucas felt relieved. Just like that, everyone forgot how only the four of them had felt perfectly fine that morning. Now, he could focus on making progress at the new training ground. But first, he needed materials. The magic material shop at Allen Magic Academy was famous, one of the top shops among the Empire's 3 great academies. It stocked rare items not available to the public. It felt like a massive shopping mall, and just like everywhere else in the academy, everything was paid for with points. A high-quality training dummy alone cost 30 points. The selection was impressive, but the prices were insane. Lucas estimated that maintaining his training would cost at least 1,000 points per month. Julia earned plenty of points, but he didn't want to rely on her forever. He'd feel bad if she ended up losing her snack money. So for now, he decided to only buy magic potion ingredients for bath use. Next time, he planned to exchange the materials stored in Ol's cave for points. The shopkeeper was fast asleep, drooling onto the counter. Lucas placed a large bag on the table. The sound jolted her awake. He handed her his card. She charged him 5 points. Lucas tapped his card against the crystal. The shopkeeper noticed his uniform. It was from the martial arts department. She knew those students only received 10 points. Half his points, gone in one purchase. She confirmed the payment. Lucas thanked her. She frowned and asked if he could really use all of that. She warned him that wasting points would only lead to regret. Lucas calmly replied that he didn't think it would be enough and that he'd be back to buy more. That annoyed her. In her mind, there was no way a martial arts student without potion classes could use that much. With spending like that, she figured he had to be a noble. She muttered that this was exactly why she hated nobles. Lucas heard her. He said nothing. That night, Lucas returned to the cave. He soaked in a small tub full of potions he just bought. Just because the potion was mixed into bathwater didn't mean its effects vanished. Still, it felt like a waste to pour it all out afterward. But there was no way he'd make someone else drink his bathwater. Suddenly, something lurked behind him. It had large, sharp teeth. Lucas stepped out of the tub feeling refreshed. He planned to gather some materials and exchange them for points. He didn't want to stand out too much, so he decided to stick with common level 2 materials. Suddenly, Lucas sensed something behind him. When he turned around, he saw Ol drinking his bathwater. He checked the tub and was shocked to see that Ol had drained every last drop. Ol looked guilty for what he had done. But Lucas didn't make a big deal out of it. Drinking the water would help strengthen Ol's body anyway. That made Ol happy. It then expressed that it wanted beef. Lucas teased it for being a glutton. Deep down, he was relieved that Ol had solved his problem of wasting the bathwater. He planned to exchange the materials for points over 3 days, choosing off-peak hours. He would hide the tools he bought at the material shop near the dorms, then sneak them into the cave later. The shopkeeper warned him that the dummy was heavy and offered to carry it with magic. Lucas said it was fine and that he could handle it himself. She thanked him and called him a blessed child. Lucas realized she assumed his family had provided the materials. That misunderstanding worked in his favor. He then remembered that the beast taming tournament was coming up soon. Then, we see Shigart being furious. He demanded to know if they were taking things seriously. The taming tournament was tomorrow. He warned them not to slack off just because they hated training. If they didn't want to work hard, they could drop out and go home. He corrected Sharp for lifting his leg too high, leaving himself wide open. Then, it was Kai's turn. Shigart scolded him for throwing a weak punch. He said Kai wouldn't even beat a chick like that. Kai was stunned. He refused to believe it, insisting that he had beaten Lucas, Sharp, and Collins before. They noticed that Shigart always struck Kai right between the eyes. Shigart then asked the three of them if they had really lost to Kai. They all answered yes. Collins and Sharp said it because they didn't want to get on Kai's bad side, while Lucas just wanted to avoid trouble. That only made Shigart sigh. In his mind, noble brats were nothing but a headache. He ordered Tishy to spar with Kai. Everyone stepped aside and watched. Kai declared that he wouldn't hold back. He was determined to prove that his skills made him more worthy of being class representative. Tishy smirked and told him to go ahead. Kai charged straight at her. He threw a punch. There was a confident smirk on his face. But to his shock, Tishy blocked his arm and countered instantly, slamming her fist into his torso. Kai's eyes widened. He couldn't believe how fast she was. After regaining his balance, he tried to kick her while she was still midair. She took the hit on her arm. Lucas didn't expect her to lift her leg. And Kai was kicked squarely on the forehead. He froze on the spot. A few seconds later, he finally snapped out of it. He shouted at her not to underestimate him. But before he could do anything else, Tishy struck his chest with her palm. The blow was heavy. It sent him flying across the training ground. The students were stunned. Even with his size advantage, Kai had lost. Now they understood why Tishy was chosen as class rep. Shigart coldly told Kai that magic beasts would never hold back. He reminded everyone to get serious. Lucas noticed that Kai went all out from the start and left himself completely open. Tishy saw that weakness and punished him for it. She reached out a hand and asked if he was okay. Shigart saw the anger boiling in Kai's eyes. He told everyone to listen carefully. He announced that every single one of them would tame at least one magic beast. Anyone who failed would be expelled from the martial arts department. Since it was the final stretch, he urged them to give everything they had until nightfall. Kai started whining to Lucas. Lucas told him bluntly that his defense was a disaster, but if he fixed his bad habits and learned to target his opponent's weaknesses, he'd be fine. Kai suddenly started blushing and shouted that wasn't the issue. He confessed that he had fallen in love with Tishy. He said it was the first time a girl had ever sent him flying. Her moves were insanely cool. He even ran ahead, already thinking up names for their future kids. Lucas wondered if Kai was secretly a masochist. The next day, the instructor announced that the gate was opening. They were told to enter in an orderly manner. They stepped into the dome and were stunned by its massive size. It made them wonder just how many magic beasts were inside. Just thinking about terrifying monsters roaming around made Lucas nervous. A student from another department complained about sharing the venue with the martial arts department. His friend mocked them, saying they'd get wiped out immediately, so there was no point in them even entering. Shigart shot them a sharp glare and replied that if they had time for useless thoughts, they should use it to memorize the tournament rules instead. The students instantly went pale. They found their assigned area and sat down. Lucas hadn't expected Shigart to stand up for the martial arts students. Suddenly, he felt an eerie presence beside him. It was Kai. His face was pale. He admitted that he was nervous. Lucas told him he'd be fine, and suggested he imagine the magic beasts as Shigart instead. Kai stared at him, completely confused by the advice. Lucas whispered to Kai that the magic beasts were so weak he could just imagine beating the crap out of Shigart instead. That instantly fired Kai up. Shigart, however, got annoyed. He had heard every single word. Lucas calmly reminded Kai that low-level magic beasts couldn't break his defense. As long as he focused on defending properly, he would definitely win. Kai clenched his fists, determined not to repeat the same mistake. Shigart nodded in satisfaction. He realized that Lucas was giving solid advice. They turned their attention to the screen, where a male instructor appeared. The instructor explained the rules. Taming 10 magic beasts would earn a perfect score. Killing a beast would result in point deductions. The time limit was 10 minutes. If a student was injured, they had to call for a teacher outside the barrier. He then announced the start of the tournament. The first group of competitors was called in. Julia entered. It was her first time inside a barrier space. She wondered how 50 magic beasts could fit inside such a small shack. Moments later, several beaver-like monsters appeared. Expecting the others to already be deep inside, Julia raised her staff. She locked onto a cute-looking magic beast. A bolt of lightning struck, hitting 2 beasts at once. The magic beasts used in the taming tournament had been coated with a special potion. Once a beast submitted, vibrant smoke would rise from its body. This allowed the teachers outside the barrier to monitor the situation using magic circles, track each student's progress, and assign scores. One teacher was completely overwhelmed. The host suddenly announced that the student in venue 5 had already completed the test. The assigned teacher doubted his own count. The host immediately called for the next competitors. Linda praised Julia and gently patted her head for finishing in just 3 minutes. She told her she was amazing, and Julia thanked her shyly. Julia then asked where the martial arts department venue was. She wanted to check on her brother. Linda told her it was venue 10. She added that the martial arts department would probably go last, so it would take some time. Julia said that was fine and decided to go buy a snack instead. Someone watched her from afar. It was Iwa. She wondered whether Lucas could achieve the same incredible results he showed during the entrance ceremony. 2 hours later, a student complained that he had only scored 1 point. He was worried he'd be transferred to a lower class. His classmates reassured him that it wouldn't happen since class placements were already decided during the entrance ceremony. Besides, all the elite class mages had only scored 1 point as well. Kai asked if they were really going to stay in the martial arts department. Lucas told him not to worry. In terms of raw power, they weren't weaker than the mage classes at all. Shigart agreed. He told his students not to underestimate themselves. The reason no one had been injured so far was simple. Level 1 magic beasts couldn't hurt humans. In physical toughness and close combat, martial artists were stronger than low-level mages. He urged them to have confidence. The students felt awkward hearing him encourage them. Deep down, Shigart was growing increasingly irritated with those brats. Tishy spoke up, saying she had checked the situation herself. It was true. No one had been injured yet. Most students were simply exhausted from running out of mana. She also gathered some important information. She explained that barriers were being used to restrict the beast's movement for safety, preventing students from being surrounded. She advised them that if a fight seemed unwinnable, they should retreat and look for a weaker beast instead. As long as they managed their stamina and took it seriously, they could earn a good score. Everyone thanked her. They cheered for their class representative. Tishy replied that she was just doing what any class representative should do. Shigart silently confirmed that choosing her had been the right decision. A nearby professor suddenly spoke up. He said he had heard some vile students eavesdropping on their discussion. He revealed that it was the martial arts department. It was Greg. He sneered, saying that when someone had no talent, all they could rely on were cowardly tricks to survive. Shigart calmly asked what he wanted. Greg replied that the martial arts department was up next, so he came to inform them. He warned Shigart that if he didn't want the entire martial arts department shut down, he'd better make his students give it everything they had. Shigart stayed silent. Greg went on, saying that even if the department disappeared, no one would mind. In his eyes, the martial arts department should never have existed in the first place. Laughing to himself, he walked away. The scene stirred old memories in Lucas, memories of the bullies who tormented him in his past life. He stepped forward. Since he had taken first place in his class during the entrance ceremony, he assumed he would go first. Shigart confirmed it, but also told him that if he felt nervous, he could let someone else take his place. Lucas shook his head. He said no. He intended to go in exactly as planned. And with this look on our MC's face, you guys know that shit's about to go down. Lucas was determined to earn a high score and shut up the jerks who looked down on the martial arts department. His classmates' morale shot up. Kai said he'd show everyone what they were made of. Sharp immediately agreed. Shigart noticed the change. Just moments ago, they had been trembling with fear. Kai reminded Lucas not to forget what Lady Tishy had said. Tishy blinked in surprise at the title. Lucas quickly pointed out that his honorifics were wrong. Shigart could only sigh. They really were a bunch of simple-minded kids. 10 minutes later, at venue 10. Lucas was already running around inside the barrier. He noticed the presence of perception magic circles and decided to avoid them. That way, no one outside would know what really happened inside. When a magic beast acknowledges a master, their souls connect. This allows them to communicate and lets the master temporarily use the beast's abilities. Ul was eating in the cave when he suddenly felt something strange. He sensed that Lucas was using his power, but he couldn't understand why. Lucas was clearly stronger than him. A holographic wolf aura wrapped around Lucas. He explained that overpowering low-level magic beasts was simply faster this way. An owl-like monster spotted him. The moment it sensed a high-level beast, it panicked and tried to flee, but it slammed straight into the barrier. Now it had nowhere to run. Lucas appeared behind it. If he wanted to make things easier for the other students, the best approach was to break the beast's will to fight. He struck the owl monster, knocking it to the ground. Lucas knew that the aura of a high-level magic beast alone was enough to terrify low-level ones. Ul's power was perfect for this. A red mist rose from the beast's body. Lucas thanked it for submitting so easily. Still, until he tamed every beast in the venue, he couldn't let the potion smoke leak outside. The owl slowly regained consciousness. Lucas moved on to search for more beasts. He told it he'd see it later. The owl replied that it never wanted to see him again. On the scoreboard, Lucas still showed 0 points. Kai grew anxious. Half the time had already passed, yet Lucas was still at 0. Julia reassured him that everything would be fine. She had earned a perfect score herself, so she believed her brother could do the same. Greg scoffed. He assumed Lucas had no points because he couldn't even defeat the weakest magic beast. He mocked it as the difference between martial artists and mages. Kai and the others were furious. Shigart stayed silent. Julia snapped back, yelling that he had no right to mock her brother. Even without magic, Lucas was incredible. Greg couldn't believe she was defending a martial artist. In his mind, she was just as blind as that teacher Linda. He said she could say whatever she wanted. In the end, the results would speak for themselves. Right after that, the host announced that Lucas had earned 1 point. Kai cheered. At least this meant he'd stay in the martial arts department. Greg sneered, saying they were celebrating way too hard over a single point when his class's top score was 5. But the instructor didn't stop counting. 2 points. 3. 4. 5. Greg's face turned pale. He couldn't accept it. There was no way this useless martial arts department had matched his top student's score. Meanwhile, Lucas had already intimidated all the beasts. His classmates would have no trouble racking up points now. All he had to do was secure his perfect score and leave. He continued subduing beasts shaped like lions, bats, and snakes. And lastly, the owl spotted him again. This time, it didn't resist. It simply accepted its fate. That made it Lucas's 10th point. The instructor's hands were trembling as he announced that Lucas had achieved a perfect score. Julia beamed with pride. She had never been prouder of her brother. Moments later, Lucas stepped out just as the instructor announced that the martial arts department had achieved a perfect score. Julia immediately ran over and told him she knew he could do it. Greg snapped back, insisting there was no way a martial arts freshman could tame 10 magic beasts. He accused Shigart of swapping Lucas with an imposter. Lucas and Julia just stared at Greg. Shigart was about to respond, but someone cut in first. The proctor stepped forward, clearly offended. Greg's words implied that he was the type of proctor who would accept bribes and allow cheating. Greg could only curse under his breath. He had forgotten about the proctors. He knew that making enemies of these high-level figures would end badly. He hurriedly explained that he didn't mean it that way. He added that Lucas had also gotten a perfect score during the entrance exam, especially when the dummy suddenly broke, which made him suspicious. The proctor decided to investigate the barrier space. Kai muttered that they were mocking the judgment process just because the martial arts department scored perfectly. Lucas told him it was fine and to let them do whatever they wanted. He said he had nothing to hide. 10 minutes later, the owl slowly woke up, blinded by a bright light pouring down from above. The barrier had opened. The monsters could now see the outside, and the terrifying human was gone. They seized the chance to escape. A mage raised his staff. A streak of golden light shot forward. It wrapped around the owl like chains, restraining it in midair. The proctors noticed that the monsters were unusually agitated, but they weren't weakened enough to justify changing venues. One instructor asked if he believed the student had earned the perfect score legitimately. The proctor replied that he couldn't find anything wrong. Still, he was certain something had happened to the magic beasts. The other instructor agreed. They decided to send those 10 beasts for a detailed inspection and continue the tournament. Eventually, the results were announced. No issues were found during the inspection. The next competitors were told to prepare. Lucas realized that although they found no problems, they still didn't believe in his abilities. He found that interesting. But the real surprise was only beginning. It was Tishy's turn. She was determined not to lose to Lucas. She chased after the wolf. The wolf sensed her presence, but it was too late. She had already landed several clean hits. If she couldn't force it to submit within 30 seconds, she planned to switch tactics and head straight for the gate. The wolf was already terrified of her. It recognized the same fur as that monster and immediately knew it was a companion. The thought that Lucas might be nearby only made it worse. Her fist was about to land, but she froze in surprise. The wolf suddenly curled into a ball, trembling in fear. It even let out a weak whine. Tishy couldn't believe it. A level 3 dark wolf had submitted without a fight. She wondered if it was just a coincidence, or if something else was going on. The thought made her smile. Maybe the students in the martial arts department weren't as weak as everyone believed. She moved on to the next monster. It was already crying, tears streaming down its face as it cowered from her. That gave her 2 points. Her third target was a boar, which she sent flying with a clean kick. Kai cheered loudly. Shigart couldn't help but show a small smile. Tishy kept going. Her final target was a saber-toothed tiger. With one decisive strike, one of its fangs flew off. That became her 10th point. The instructor announced that Tishy Himeru had achieved a perfect score. Cheers erupted. Their department had earned another 10 points. They also noticed that she had finished faster than Lucas. The proctors quietly discussed what was happening. At first, they suspected something was wrong with the beasts again, so they sent them for detailed inspection. Tishy stepped out of the barrier feeling proud. She realized the tournament beasts weren't as terrifying as she once thought. And more importantly, she learned that being a martial artist didn't mean being weaker than a mage. Match 3 began. The bat was taken down instantly. Sharp Alto was thrilled. He scored a perfect 10. Match 4 was Collins' turn. Collins' Desio also earned a perfect 10. The next match was Kai's. The poor tiger was scared stiff. Kai Taro scored another perfect 10. Lucas gave Kai a high 5. As the tournament continued, the martial arts students kept stacking perfect scores one after another, shooting straight to the top of every event. Shigart looked pleased. He took a long drink from his liquor bottle. Meanwhile, the detailed inspection found no problems with the magical beast or the barrier space. The headmaster knew the students' martial arts skills were impressive, but he couldn't understand why their scores were so unusually high. The proctor explained that the magical beast had already been shaken by the earlier attacks from the mage class students. But the tournament had been held for years, and this was the first time anything like this had ever happened. The proctor argued that this was also the first tournament since the martial arts division was established. He suspected that fighting the beast up close frightened it even more. Director Otani personally inspected the beast in its cage. He decided that starting next year, the martial arts division would go first. He also ruled that the current scores would remain unchanged. Greg couldn't believe it. That meant the martial arts department would overtake the mage class and tie with the elite division for first place. Shigart could only sigh. Then, the headmaster confirmed it was true and asked if Greg had a problem with it. Greg said no, but argued that winning first place through luck instead of pure skill felt unfair. Director Otani replied that luck was part of one's ability. He explained that none of this was the students' fault, so their scores couldn't simply be discarded. The headmaster agreed. He ordered them to announce the results. Greg swallowed his anger, but his glare locked onto Shigart and Linda. He hoped Shigart was paying close attention. Director Otani and the headmaster remained in front of the beast. The headmaster told Director Otani that this was a serious issue tied to the very survival of the martial arts department. Knowing Otani was a level 9 martial artist, he wanted him to investigate further. He suspected Otani already knew the truth. Director Otani replied that he couldn't share the details, but he assured him that nothing harmful was happening to the school. Deep down, he decided to play along and pretend his abilities weren't special, just as Lucas wanted. Meanwhile, we see Kai was ecstatic about getting a perfect score. He wanted to tell his father immediately. He added that taming the magical beast wasn't nearly as difficult as everyone made it seem. Collins agreed, believing it was because they had grown much stronger since the entrance exams. Lucas said it was all thanks to Shigart's special training. He felt relieved that no one suspected him. They returned to their room. Kai asked what they planned to do with the 20 bonus points they would receive tomorrow for placing first. Sharp said he was saving his. He even reminded Kai that Kai still owed him a meal. Collins added that Sharp needed to keep points ready for emergencies. Kai looked disappointed by their answers. He told them they should spend the points on high-grade materials for next month's MangaCaps combat training. Lucas asked what he meant. Kai explained that he was talking about the Allen Magic Academy's signature trial ground, the Allen Tower. Inside was a massive illusionary world filled with different races like magical beasts, beastmen, giants, and more. They would fight illusions, so there was no real danger, but the combat experience was real. It was said to give insane training against all kinds of opponents. From what Sharp knew, only 100 freshmen were allowed to enter. All 12 students from the elite class were guaranteed spots, so he doubted people like them could grab one of the remaining 88. Kai said he heard that participants were usually chosen based on taming tournament rankings. Since they all earned perfect scores, he was confident they would be selected. Sharp and Kai jumped to their feet at once. Kai asked where they were going. Collins told him they were heading to the material shop to buy training gear. Just as Lucas expected, every martial artist wanted to grow stronger. That alone justified his decision to let everyone score perfectly in the tournament. Kai grabbed Lucas's arm and invited him to come along to the material shop, but Lucas declined. He pulled out a pendant. He told Kai that he wanted to take a closer look at the pendant Shigart had given him earlier. Kai recognized it immediately. It was the reward given to the first 3 people who earned perfect scores. He knew that if Lucas had been even 1 spot lower, it would have gone to Tishy. Lucas replied that his only real talent was being lucky. Kai let out a quiet sigh. He decided to head to the shop to catch up with the others. Students were gathered around the scoreboard. It showed that every student from the martial arts department had earned a perfect score. Greg's student, Lila, was furious. They were supposed to take the top ranks for the 3rd year in a row and finally become the elite class. Her father had worked for 10 years to make that happen. Someone slammed a fist into the scoreboard. That male student complained that on top of everything else, those bastards had stolen 20 spots for the Allen Tower. He argued that those slots were meant for mage students. Another student said the teachers from the Magic Beast base had already confirmed that the martial arts students didn't cheat. He pulled the holographic dagger off the scoreboard. Still, he claimed he heard that the martial arts department had bribed the Magic Beast base teachers. The students began to seriously consider it. For a kid from the Taroi family, bribery would be nothing. A student wearing glasses spoke up, saying he had just seen the Taroi family heir. This student was Andre, another one of Greg's students. He said he had just seen Kai buying the last piece of training gear at the campus material shop. He warned that once the martial arts department received their 20 bonus points tomorrow, they would sweep up all the valuable materials. Lila recalled that a martial artist's meridians were more fragile than glass. She suggested they correct that sudden growth. A few hours later, someone threw a dagger aside. The students on the ground shouted, asking why they were suddenly being attacked. Sharp was slashed across the back. Collins saw the poison spreading and knew it needed treatment fast. He asked if they just wanted points and offered to give them up. Lila summoned vines and struck him, while Andre attacked Sharp's legs. The vines pierced Collins' chest, and Sharp's knees froze solid. Their screams echoed through the area. Lila, Andre, and the brown-haired student who had smashed the scoreboard earlier looked down at them. Lila told them to shut up and said she didn't need their damn points. Sharp demanded to know why they were doing this. She told him her demand was simple. She wanted them to crawl back to the martial arts department like this. and tell their entire class that their lives were worth less than dirt. The sun had already set. A few hours later, Lucas and Kai went looking for them. Kai said those guys were usually late coming back from their part-time jobs, so he didn't understand why Lucas looked so tense. But Lucas could tell something was wrong. He had never smelled blood that strong on that road before. It grew stronger. Kai was about to ask what felt different, but Lucas suddenly took off. Kai struggled to keep up. Out of breath, he asked why Lucas had sprinted ahead without warning. Lucas clenched his fists. Kai froze at the sight in front of him. It was Collins and Sharp. They were badly injured. Kai's face went pale. He asked who had done this. Lucas knelt down and lifted Collins into his arms. Collins weakly whispered that it was Lila from Greg's class. His meridians had been severed. He lost consciousness right after. Lucas was furious. Kai shouted Collins' name. Lucas told him he was still alive, just unconscious. He stopped the bleeding and sent Kai to fetch potions. Kai ran as fast as he could. Lucas quickly assessed their condition. They had been cursed, and their bones were shattered. There was no doubt about it. This was a bone-shattering art used by dark market assassins. Rage surged through him at the thought of such cruel techniques being used on them. This was no longer hazing. It was attempted murder. Sharp cried out for his mom and dad, muttering that it hurt. Lucas stayed by his side. He promised him that he would get revenge. Moments later, Tishy and Kai arrived. She was shocked that they had been attacked. Kai explained that they ran into Tishy on the way back. Lucas told her their lives were not in danger, but they would need a few days to recover. Kai finally relaxed. He said it was only possible because Lucas gave them first aid in time. He swore he would never forget what those bastards did. Tishy was furious as well. She planned to report everything to the student council the next day. Kai said the teachers were brushing it off, so he doubted the student council would listen. Lucas said it didn't matter. Tishy froze when she saw his expression. He felt like a completely different person, not the calm and gentle Lucas she knew. Through clenched teeth, Lucas vowed to make them pay. The next day, at the student council room, Theodore listened to their request. Someone stated that they wanted to challenge the students from Greg's class to a duel. Lucas, Kai, and Tishy stood before him. Lucas said that if they won, they would demand a public apology from the students who attacked their classmates. If they lost, they were willing to hand over their S-rank bonus to Greg's class. Theodore replied that they had no proof Greg's students were responsible. He then asked if the S-rank bonus they mentioned was the necklace. He tossed it onto the floor. Kai was stunned. Theodore claimed it slipped from his hand. He said that if they were going to make such a big deal out of a duel, betting something that cheap was laughable. The necklace landed near Kai's feet. Kai struggled to hold back his anger. He cursed at him, but our boy Lucas tried to stop him. Lucas asked what would be considered appropriate. Theodore took a moment to think. He suggested something unique to the school. Then an idea struck him. Their qualifications for the Allen Tower. He proposed that the losing side would permanently lose their right to enter the Allen Tower. Lucas smirked and said he had no problem with that. The duel was scheduled for 2 days later, drawing the attention of the entire school. Freshmen who were unhappy about the martial arts department securing Allen Tower slots loudly supported Greg's class. And to everyone's shock, their instructor Greg openly praised the 3 students who had attacked Collins' group. Meanwhile, Shigart said nothing. He simply pushed their combat training even harder. The day of the duel arrived. Students cheered for the martial arts department fighters, eager to see the outcome. With such a massive crowd watching, Lila told them to apologize now and she might consider forgiving them. Lucas replied that no one would know the winner until the duel was over. The referee ordered both sides to prepare. Kai just wanted it finished. Andre stepped forward first. Kai charged straight at him as Andre formed multiple magic circles. The ice crystals flew, but they couldn't stop Kai. Andre stared in disbelief as Kai deflected every single one. Kai looked at him and asked if that was all he had. Kai sliced through the ice crystals and challenged Andre, asking if that was all he had. Andre adjusted his glasses. He hid a smirk. Kai hadn't even realized he had walked straight into a trap. Andre was glad he was just a musclehead. Kai's feet suddenly froze solid. Ice locked him in place. Andre walked closer and told him there was no escape now. He said goodbye to the pretty noble boy. Kai tensed. Andre struck. Blood spilled. Andre scoffed and said Kai finally understood. That was the price of provoking a mage. Kai was frozen mid-collapse inside shattered ice. His body slumped forward. Blood dripped from his hand. Kai muttered something. Andre leaned in and asked what he was saying. He told him that if he was surrendering, he had to say it clearly. Lila sneered, saying a loser would always be a loser. She told them to admit defeat, and she might let them live. But then, she froze. Lucas glared at her and asked how long she planned to keep running her mouth. At the same time, Kai suddenly asked Andre if his ice magic could freeze lava from the Magic Beast mountain range. A lump of lava burned in his hand. Lila shouted that Andre was an idiot. She screamed at him to run and get away. An explosion erupted. Andre was blown backward. He realized too late. It was a lava slime. Setting it off at point-blank range meant Kai had been ready to die. Then Kai appeared right behind him. A blade stabbed into Andre's side. He tried to lift his wand. Pain ripped through him. The crowd gasped. A martial artist had wounded a mage. Kai's classmates panicked when they saw his leg, completely scorched. Blowing up his own leg just to escape the ice prison took insane resolve. Kai remembered Lucas's words. The moment Andre thought his spell had worked, he relaxed and left himself wide open. Andre couldn't accept it. Being injured by a mere martial artist made his blood boil. With both legs badly damaged, he knew he couldn't dodge anymore. He began casting a spell and screamed for Kai to fall and die. Instead, Kai released another lava slime. It was about to explode. Kai grinned and rushed forward as ice shards flew toward him. Andre yelled that Kai was insane. One shard struck Kai's fist, freezing it solid. He shattered the ice and muttered that this was why he hated ice users. They were always sloppy after attacking. Andre screamed for him to stay back. But then, Kai slammed his fist into Andre's head, shattering his glasses. Andre spat blood. He rolled and crashed to the ground. He couldn't believe it. His ice shield had been broken by pure strength. He never thought the day would come when he'd lose to a martial artist. The host announced that the first match went to the martial arts department. Kai hurried over to Lucas, who tossed him a bottle of water. Kai asked if Lucas had seen everything. He bragged about how amazing he felt and said he was in peak condition. What he didn't know was that Lucas had slipped a homemade strength-enhancing potion into his breakfast that morning. The next challenger was Tishy. Kai wondered if she would be okay. Lucas said Tishy would be just fine. The crowd was confused by what they'd just seen. They assumed Andre must have gone easy on him, especially since he was from the Taroy family. Tishy knew they won fair and square, so she couldn't understand why they refused to accept the result. She ducked low on purpose, barely avoiding the attack as it tore through the air above her. The force still ripped past, kicking up dust and debris. Large vines burst out from the wall. It was a surprise attack right from the start. If it had landed, Tishy knew she would have been torn apart. Lena understood something the martial artist didn't. Mages didn't care about moral principles. For mages, only results mattered. She released even more vines. Tishy charged straight through them. Her face went pale when she saw Lena's palm rushing toward her. Tishy struck Lena across the face. Lena froze in shock. Tishy was only level 1. How could she move this fast? Her brows tightened. Tishy had a lesson to teach her. She grabbed Lena's hand and told her that their moral principles included valuing human life above everything else. Lila tried to activate her plant magic. Tishy rushed in and unleashed a storm of punches. Blue energy exploded with every strike. The attacks came too fast, completely overwhelming her. Everyone was stunned. Tishy was hitting her mana pathways with perfect precision. The final punch was already finished. Her fist dropped, still clenched, thin smoke drifting from her knuckles. The air around her hand slowly settled, showing just how heavy that blow was. Lucas knew the fight was already over. He recognized Tishy's sharp perception. Lila was completely broken. Every muscle screaming, her body barely able to move. Tishy warned her not to trample on a martial artist's pride so casually. The host announced that the second match winner was also from the martial arts department. When Lila lost consciousness, several needles slipped from her hand. A student council member gasped. She hadn't expected Lila to be hiding those. Mina demanded to know why Theodore allowed something so dangerous. Theodore brushed it off, telling her not to overreact. He claimed nothing bad was going to happen. One student shouted proudly about Tishy. He said Shigart knew exactly what he was doing when he chose her as class rep. They were finally proving wrong everyone who called them losers. Greg was furious. Their plan was to crush the martial arts department's morale and reclaim their Allen Tower slots. But now, they were the ones being humiliated. The last bully still believed there was hope if he could use his technique one more time. Lucas stepped into the arena. His opponent stepped forward as well. The third match began. The man vanished in an instant. Lucas stayed alert. Some mages trained in hand-to-hand combat too. With high-speed clones, this guy expected Lucas to be helpless. Tishy noticed Lucas wasn't attacking. He kept his distance, fully focused on defense. It made her wonder what he was planning. Lucas knew there was no need to reveal his true strength. He kept his output at just 5%, enough to test his opponent. The man's eyes widened. Lucas threw a punch, but it didn't hit. The man froze, confused. For a moment, he wondered if it was his imagination, because he could swear Lucas had just released a terrifying aura. Confidence surged through him, and he sneered, telling Lucas that he'd just had bad luck. He flicked a dagger forward, and it grazed Lucas's skin. Lucas went silent. The man smirked, convinced that no one could withstand his bone-shattering art. He drove a punch toward Lucas, shouting that he would break every bone in his body. But the next moment, he froze. Lucas calmly asked if he really thought he could walk away unharmed. The man was baffled. His bone-shattering art wasn't working at all. Kai felt uneasy. From where he stood, it looked like Lucas was in trouble. He wondered what the bully had done to him. The man began to panic. He tried to guess what kind of finishing move Lucas was hiding, then convinced himself it was all just a bluff. He declared it was over and lunged in with a stabbing strike. Lucas caught his hand mid-attack and told him that was enough. Now it was his turn. Lucas struck the other student. The impact blasted a massive crater into the ground. Dust and debris exploded outward, making the power behind the hit unmistakable. He was stunned. A level 1 martial artist was releasing an aura like that? Lucas glared at him and said that no matter what happened next, he didn't need to worry about anyone seeing it. Then he asked if he was ready. The guy called out for his magic sword, but Lucas slammed him into the ground. The blade sliced into his own hand instead. He screamed in agony. Lucas pointed out how familiar the situation felt. He asked how it felt to have a fragment of the weapon he used on Sharp pierce his own hand. Suddenly, the guy flew to the opposite side of the arena. It was caused by a single slap from Lucas. A tooth flew out as he screamed at the top of his lungs. He couldn't activate his mana anymore, and he realized Lucas had severed his mana pathways. Greg was stunned. The guy begged Lucas to stop. He admitted defeat. Lucas stopped, but he stayed silent. Greg was in disbelief. He truly believed his student could defeat Lucas. Shigert quietly observed the scene. He couldn't believe Greg couldn't even tell how badly injured his own student was. He knew this was going to be troublesome. Lucas returned to his classmates. Kai said he was just glad Lucas lasted all 3 rounds. With that, the martial arts department won every match. They were overjoyed, especially after being looked down on for so long. It made them realize they could actually defeat mages in a duel. Fortunately, Tishy was alert, and then suddenly shouted. She warned Lucas to look behind him. His opponent was about to stab him. But in the blink of an eye, Lucas vanished. He reappeared behind the guy and calmly said it took him long enough. He grabbed the back of his neck and squeezed. The guy felt as if something had been ripped out of his body. He had no idea what Lucas had done to him. Tears streamed down his face. Then he lost consciousness and collapsed face first onto the ground. Lucas asked him if he had ever thought about karma when he used his bone-shattering art. The host announced that Blake had admitted defeat but attempted a sneak attack, which Lucas immediately countered. It was a complete victory for Lucas of the martial arts department. Iowa stood there, dumbfounded. Julia asked her what was wrong. She recognized the technique, an advanced skill called meridian severance recorded in ancient texts. No martial artist in the Empire had been able to use it for over 100 years. It made her question who Lucas truly was. Lucas's classmates excitedly said that all 3 of them were incredible. Some even started thinking that mages were just cowards who relied on sneak attacks. One female student boldly said that from now on, if any mage gave her trouble, she would challenge them to a duel. Everyone was in high spirits, but Tishy quickly shut that down. She said it would be wrong to think that way, and claimed they were only stronger that day by coincidence. The student suddenly bumped into someone. It was Shigart. His presence alone was intimidating as he scolded them, telling them to know their place. He warned them not to get arrogant. The girl argued that they had won the taming tournament. Shigart replied that it was already settled. The only reason the martial arts department won was because the beasts were under extreme stress from prolonged attacks. In other words, they got lucky. She argued back that they won the duel with their own strength. Shigart corrected her, saying that those 3 were strong, but that didn't represent the entire martial arts department. He asked if they planned to live their entire lives like goldfish turds, simply following others around. He added that if that was the case, what would they do when they were attacked and nearly killed for no reason, just like Collins and Sharp? He asked if they would really be fine with that if they couldn't even get revenge, let alone survive. He told them that if they were okay with that, they would never grow stronger, and if that was the case, they might as well quit the martial arts department as soon as possible. The words stung, but they also lit a fire in them. Instead of breaking their spirit, it pushed them to work harder. Deep down, Lucas agreed with the teacher. Martial artists should be proud of who they are, but without relentless training, their skills would never improve. A woman waited by a tree as Shigart walked past. She stopped him and commented that he was starting to sound like a real homeroom teacher. He replied that he just didn't want them to end up like him. Then, he asked if she needed something. It was Linda. She told him that the mana pathway rupture looked identical to damage caused by the ancient forbidden art known as Meridian Crusher. Dark marks slowly appeared on Blake's hands. He trembled with rage, unable to accept what had been done to him. That night, a carriage sped through the darkness. A man stepped out. He clenched his fist, barely holding back his rage. He stormed inside and slammed his hand on the table, demanding to know how a simple duel between new students could end like this. He accused the headmaster directly. His son's magic meridians were shattered. He'd never be able to use magic again. He demanded that the malicious perpetrator be severely punished. He insisted they take responsibility by disbanding the martial arts department. Someone suddenly smashed a bottle of liquor onto the floor. It was Shigart. He calmly agreed that the malicious perpetrator should indeed be punished. He stated that the magic Blake and his 2 companions used during the duel perfectly matched the magic used on Sharp and Collins earlier. That alone was clear evidence that those 3 were responsible for severely injuring Academy students. He turned to the headmaster and said, "According to Academy regulations, Greg and the others should be strictly punished." Greg felt a chill. He finally realized those bastards had been trying to ruin them from the very beginning, even during the duel. But he couldn't understand why Shigart was bringing this up now. He shouted that Shigart was changing the subject. They were supposed to be discussing who was responsible for Blake being struck by a forbidden art. Shigart replied that it had not yet been confirmed to be a forbidden art. A technique like Meridian Crusher was not something a mere martial artist could possibly wield. Blake's father paused. He knew Shigart was right. There was no way that the incompetent son of the Ryan family, cursed by the gods, could control an ancient forbidden art. Greg clicked his tongue and argued back. A high-level martial artist could control a forbidden art. And the only high-level martial artist present at the duel was Shigart himself. With that, he subtly accused Shigart of being the culprit. Shigert replied coldly that if he could use such an art, he would have used it on Greg long ago. The headmaster noticed that Shigart clearly did not believe Blake had been struck by a forbidden art. He asked how Shigart intended to explain Blake's current condition. Shigart answered that it was nothing more than reaping what they had sown. In fact, he had already asked Lucas about it afterward. Lucas had firmly denied using any forbidden art and offered his own explanation. According to him, Blake had spent a fortune hiring black market assassins to learn cruel ways to inflict pain, and had become infamous in those circles as a noble-born problem child. Lucas suggested that Blake might have been afraid that his black market dealings would be exposed. Shigert immediately followed that line of thought, adding that a powerful figure from the underworld could have used the duel as the perfect chance to silence him. The headmaster fell silent, considering the possibility. Blake's father exploded in anger, calling it a ridiculous rumor. Greg pointed out that it was only speculation. Shigert didn't deny it. He said it was speculation, but far more believable than the idea that a novice martial artist had used an ancient forbidden art. What mattered was this. Someone capable of wielding forbidden techniques had clearly been present. He warned that recklessly making an enemy of such a figure would be disastrous. Meridian Crusher was a terrifying technique, one that could instantly cripple even a genius mage. Director Otani went to the library. He located the book he had been searching for. The dust on its cover had been wiped away, proof that someone had handled it recently. He flipped through the pages. The hand diagram inside looked familiar. It confirmed his suspicion, and a faint smile crossed his face. He continued reading. Meanwhile, at the hot spring in the Magic Beast Mountain Range, Lucas decided it was time to begin the final treatment for Alto and Decio. He uncorked a potion and poured it into the water where Collins and Sharp were soaking. The spring glowed brightly. Collins let out a painful groan. The liquid seeped through the bandages and began restoring his damaged muscles. Sharp cried out as well. New muscle fibers formed and reattached themselves to his body. Lucas waited patiently. He knew it hurt, but he hoped they could endure it just a little longer. He felt nervous, but he was confident that martial artists could use recovery arts just like mages. A few days later in Daku Town, a carriage arrived. Catherine and Holt stepped out. They were happy. They would finally see the kids again after such a long time. Catherine looked around and realized nothing had changed. Holt noticed and gave her a sympathetic look. She forced a smile and told him not to worry. She was just reminiscing about the past. A man leading a horse approached them. Catherine's eyes welled up when she recognized him. It was Sayan Miranda, her younger brother and Iwa's father. He warmly greeted his sister. 17 years ago, the Beastman tribes launched a coordinated attack along the Empire's borders, plunging the region into constant war. They were massive bipedal beasts with sharp teeth, savage, and terrifying. The people united to drive them back. After 3 days and nights of non-stop fighting, both sides were left utterly devastated. During that war, a brown-haired mage woman joined the battlefield. She was moments away from being struck down by a beast, when a knight saved her. That was the moment Mage Catherine Miranda met the young commander of the Holt Knightly Order, beginning their fateful encounter. Holt was covered in wounds, yet he smiled at her. Catherine stood frozen in shock. After facing death side by side, they swore to spend their lives together. But Duke Miranda opposed the marriage. He disowned her, and Catherine severed all ties with the Miranda family. Neither of them ever imagined that their children would later meet at Allen Magic Academy. San remarked on how quickly time had passed. He had heard that her children were exceptional. Their father even said that Julia reminded him of Catherine when she was young. Hearing that confirmed what Catherine had long suspected. Her father still acknowledged her children's existence. Sayan suggested she visit the estate. Deep down, their father had wanted to see her all this time. Catherine blushed and asked if that was really okay. Sayan sighed. He replied that it would be fine, as long as it was just her. She understood immediately. Holt wasn't welcome. She turned toward him conflicted. Holt smiled and told her to go. He still had to return to the front lines anyway. She looked worried. He reassured her, saying it was fine. He was just glad she could go home again, even if he couldn't be with her. He promised to come for her once the war was over. Then he left. Sayan hadn't expected Holt to swallow his pride and secretly ask for his help, all just to reunite Catherine with her father. He acknowledged that Holt truly was a good husband. But their father still hadn't forgiven a noble mage for marrying a martial artist. Sayan hoped that one day, someone would appear and change the world's view of martial artists. Meanwhile, Lucas sneezed. Deep down, he wondered what someone from the Five Elements dorm's disciplinary committee was doing there. Julia teased Kai when she spotted him buying food for someone. Kai had dark circles under his eyes and carried several lunchboxes. He told her to back off and swore that once Collins and Sharp recovered, he'd make them treat him to a proper meal. Lucas chuckled and said that was actually kind of sweet. As they walked past, other students whispered among themselves. They claimed the martial arts department only won because some random assassin had attacked Blake right before the duel. They laughed about how someone could get lucky 3 times in a row. Julia heard every word. A chilling shadow surged from her body. The gossiping students went pale. She scolded them sharply. Kai leaned toward Lucas and muttered that he was always watching, then headed off to eat with Tishy. Julia happily enjoyed her food. Lucas noticed the new hairpin in her hair. She explained that Iwa had given it to her as a gift from the Miranda family. Lucas wasn't surprised. Of course they wanted to win over a magical prodigy like Julia and pull her into their circle. He told her that for their mother's sake, she should try to get along with Iwa. Julia looked confused, not understanding what he meant. Kai noticed she was only eating cake and casually placed some meat on her plate. Thinking about her mother reminded Julia that she still needed to write a letter. She wanted to tell her that she had become the class representative. Just then, a woman approached and congratulated her. It was Mina. Mina told her that she was destined to become one of the school's pillars someday, and that she would always support her. At a nearby table, a woman suddenly stood up. She stormed away without a word, her steps sharp and aggressive. Julia noticed her as she left. The woman looked furious. A short while earlier, Linda had told Iwa that her abilities rivaled Julia's, especially in divine magic. But in every other aspect, Julia was superior. That was why Linda believed Julia was the better choice for class representative. She hoped Iwa would understand. In the present moment, Iwa stormed out of the cafeteria, determined to prove her worth and show that the teacher was favoring Julia unfairly. Julia noticed her leaving, and she could tell Iwa was furious. She also realized that Iwa hadn't been eating properly. Julia planned to buy her some lunch and bring it back to her. Mina, sitting beside her, asked if she was close with Iwa. Julia said yes. They were roommates. She admitted that she admired Iwa's mental magic, since she had never seen anything like it before. Lucas agreed that mental magic was extremely rare. Mina looked like she had more to say. She pressed a finger against the table, forming a barrier around them. Lucas immediately noticed. It was a mute magic circle, blocking all sound from escaping. Mina lowered her voice and said that being too smart often made people difficult to deal with. She then commented that Julia also had interesting wind magic. She was about to suggest something, but Julia wasn't listening. Her brother was busy piling meat onto her plate. Lucas stepped in, catching Mina's attention. He pointed out that it didn't seem like she came over just to chat. Mina noticed that Julia's brother was already on guard. Still, she believed that as long as Julia trusted her, a little interference didn't matter. She acknowledged Lucas's sharpness and decided to be straightforward. She explained that there had been a strange shift in the Magic Beast Mountain Range's ecosystem. The number of low-level magic beasts had dropped sharply. Even the magic-crested panther cubs that once roamed everywhere had disappeared. Lucas and Julia immediately thought of all Mina continued. 3 days ago, an Imperial investigation team had discovered the lair of a high-level magic beast. Someone nearby dropped their spoon. Julia's face tensed with worry. Lucas cleared his throat and she froze, realizing what she was about to say out loud. Lucas calmly asked if Mina wanted to assign them a field mission. Then he asked about the difficulty level. Mina answered that it was worth 100 points. Lucas and Julia were stunned. Lucas replied that it would be a piece of cake for them. At the Miranda estate. Duke Miranda, head of the Miranda family, sat down to eat. He was dining with his children. Sayan watched him quietly, thinking about how stubborn their father was. Catherine's room was kept perfectly clean, yet she was still being made to stay in the guest quarters. He also noticed that his sister hadn't taken a single bite of her food. The atmosphere felt like a wake. Duke Miranda finally broke the silence by calling Catherine's name. He spoke about Julia, saying she had the potential to become a sainted archmage. He was willing to acknowledge her as his granddaughter. Catherine thanked him, then mentioned Lucas. She said he was an excellent martial artist who had achieved a perfect score in the exam. But the Duke dismissed it outright. He said he didn't care how exceptional a martial artist was. To him, they were worthless. He made his stance clear. What the Miranda family sought were only those with the talent to become sainted archmages. Just as Catherine expected, her father's prejudice against martial artists hadn't changed at all. At that moment, the butler knocked. He informed Duke Miranda that the investigation team sent to the Magic Beast Mountain Range had reported new findings. Catherine and Sayan both tensed. They were alarmed that he had suddenly begun investigating the Magic Beast Mountain Range. The Duke read the letter handed to him. It reported the discovery of a new region beneath the lair, with an unknown danger level. Sayan asked if something serious had happened there. Catherine immediately followed up, worried about whether the students at the nearby Allen Magic Academy were in danger. The Duke replied that the academy had its own teachers, and he also had subordinates stationed nearby. As long as the students stayed on campus, there shouldn't be any danger. He advised her to wait until the matter was fully resolved before visiting the children. Catherine nodded and agreed. Back to the academy. Mina found out that to take on the mission, they needed at least 5 people, and one of them had to be a student council member. She grew furious. When she checked the mission details yesterday, there had been no such requirement. The student receptionist apologized and explained that there had been an incident in a mountain cave, so the student council president had changed the conditions. Mina clenched her fists. She knew Theodore had done it on purpose, fully aware that she wouldn't be able to gather enough people. Lucas couldn't help but wonder if the student council vice president was really so isolated that she couldn't even find 5 volunteers. Now he understood why she had been clinging to Julia since the entrance exam. Mina apologized to them, saying they would have to give up on the mission. But then, Lucas told her to leave the problem of gathering people to them. Julia smirked and told Mina to let them help. Mina's eyes grew misty as she thanked them. Deep down, she never planned to bring those kids along. Later on, she was far from impressed. A student in gleaming armor appeared. It was Kai. He declared that if his best friend Lucas was going on a mission, then he would step up too. In truth, he was just happy that he finally had a chance to use the advanced gear his parents had bought him. Maya peeked out from behind Lucas and greeted Mina. She looked shy, but she offered to help with her water element healing magic. Mina's face went pale. Deep inside, she felt that every single one of these kids was dead weight. Lucas leaned in and whispered to Julia, asking why she had called Maya instead of Iwa. Julia answered sadly that Iwa wouldn't even listen to her. Mina could only sigh and let it go. They needed the numbers. She believed that as long as she and Julia were there, they could handle the mission. They set off. Even with acceleration magic, it would take half a day on foot to reach the monster nest. A few hours later, they arrived at the cave entrance. The area was under investigation by an Imperial survey team. A flag stood at the entrance. The crest belonged to the Miranda family. There were also clear traces of battle. Lucas and Julia were both relieved and shocked that this wasn't Ul's den. Suddenly, Lucas sensed danger. An attack came from above. A grotesque birdman monster dove straight at them, its massive orange eyes glowing. Huge black wings spread wide as jagged yellow talons reached down, ready to tear them apart. Mina reacted instantly, unleashing her wind magic. The wind sharpened into a blade and sliced through the monster. Its body split cleanly in two. Lucas stepped aside as the corpse crashed down. Another monster of the same kind lunged at Mina from behind. She sensed it just in time. Kai moved without hesitation, raising his magic shield and blocking the attack. He told her to leave close combat to them. Kai got distracted, and the monster's talons were about to tear into him. Lucas stepped in and kicked the creature's leg, ripping it clean off its body. He scolded Kai, telling him to stop trying to look cool all by himself. Kai shot back, challenging him to see if he could keep up with his speed. Maya cast a water spirit barrier and told them to leave support to her. More monsters swooped down from above. Mina smiled. It had been a long time since she felt this kind of teamwork. She warned them that the monsters hated wind and lightning magic. Then she stopped mid-sentence when she noticed a faint glow of light. She turned and saw Julia. Julia unleashed barrier magic. Within the barrier, several monsters were roasted all at once. Their shrill screeches echoed through the air. When it was over, Julia's staff was left smoking. Kai whistled, commenting that her lightning magic was just as insanely powerful as ever. Mina stood frozen. Julia glanced at her. "Did you say something just now?" Mina shook her head and replied that it was nothing. Deep down, she realized she had seriously underestimated this prodigy's true strength. Moments later, Maya used her water healing magic on Kai. He stared in awe as his wounds healed instantly and called her a goddess. Deep down, she thought he was exaggerating. But if Lucas were the one to say it, just imagining that made her cheeks turn red. She started acting strangely, and Lucas noticed. After that, they entered the cave. It was massive. Mina conjured a small light. Julia was impressed. She hadn't expected the space to grow even larger the deeper they went. Kai pointed out another passage. It was wide enough for a small army to march through. Lucas said the cave wasn't naturally formed. It looked artificially dug out. He warned that there might be monsters underground. Mina added that the deeper they went, the more dangerous it would become. She told everyone to stay sharp. Suddenly, goblins leapt at them. Julia incinerated all of them at once. The goblins coughed blood before they were completely immobilized. These creatures had lived underground for so long that their eyesight had deteriorated. They relied entirely on sound to locate prey. But their ears had been destroyed by the thunder earlier, so for now, the group was safe. Kai stepped forward and finished them off with his blade. He argued that if they fought every monster head-on, the battles would never end. Then he said he had a great plan. A short while later, chaos erupted. Kai happily acted as bait, drawing a swarm of monsters after him. Julia and Mina took their positions. Kai noticed the signal. The two girls unleashed their attacks. The monsters froze the moment they realized what was coming. But it was too late. They were swallowed by a massive explosion. Lucas admitted it was efficient. It was a classic area of effect tactic straight out of a game. It made him briefly wonder if Kai might be reincarnated too. Kai was buried beneath a pile of monster corpses, yet he emerged looking oddly energetic. He proudly explained that his plan was to lure all the enemies into one spot so Julia and Mina could wipe them out in one strike. He thought it was brilliant. He bragged that only someone equipped with top-tier gear like him could pull it off. He even apologized to Lucas for stealing the spotlight. Deep down, Lucas wanted to tell him not to assume everyone enjoyed showing off as much as he did. Thanks to Kai's plan, the group cleared the monsters efficiently. They slowly advanced toward the center of the nest. The three girls were clearly exhausted. Kai charged ahead again, but Lucas told him to wait. Julia and the others needed rest. Kai pretended not to hear. He kept going. Soon after, he returned with another massive group of monsters in tow. But he froze. No one was there. They were standing on top of a cliff. Even though it was Kai's own fault, Lucas hated the idea of abandoning a teammate. But he endured it. Julia's mana was almost completely depleted. They had no choice. She silently prayed that Kai would find happiness in his next life. Maya had already begun mourning him. Maya screamed for Kai, saying that if he was even a little bit alive, she promised she would save him. Lucas, Julia, and Mina wanted to tell her not to take it so seriously. Suddenly, a loud sound echoed through the cave. Maya grew anxious. She wondered if it was Kai. Lucas shook his head and told her no. The sound came from the center of the nest. He suspected the survey team had found the nest's boss. Mina suggested they go check it out. Lucas felt uneasy. The smell of blood in the air was overwhelming. Before moving out, he handed Mina a potion he had brought from home. She thanked him. Mina believed that with the survey team's strength, they shouldn't need to intervene. Still, she wanted to confirm, just in case. When they arrived, they were met with a massacre. Blood was everywhere. A red aura seeped from the soldiers' bodies. They were horrified. They couldn't believe the entire survey team had been wiped out. Mina immediately sensed that something was wrong. She ordered an immediate retreat. Lucas felt a sudden chill. In the next instant, the upper right wall exploded. A monster burst out. Mina froze. Standing before them was a colossal beast. Its massive body was covered in dark purple fur. Curved horns jutted from its head, and its snarling face was packed with sharp fangs. Glowing blue eyes burned with rage as it gripped a heavy club, looking ready to smash everything in its path. Mina trembled when she saw the Minotaur. She couldn't understand why a Calamity-class monster was here. Lucas rushed to her side. There was no way something this powerful should appear on a school mission. Still, the presence felt strangely familiar to him. When the Minotaur swung its axe, Lucas shoved Mina away. The massive blade nearly split him in half. He barely managed to block it with his forearms. An ice shield shattered the force before it could crush him. Julia arrived and asked if they were okay. Mina asked if Julia had cast the ice shield. Lucas knew it wasn't her. Then they saw a man clutched in the Minotaur's hand. The man screamed as the Minotaur crushed him. It snarled, annoyed that he had interfered. Even while badly injured, the man still protected them. With what little strength he had left, he shouted for them to contact the Imperial Army for backup. The ancient seal here had already been broken. The Minotaur tightened its grip. It mocked them as fools and declared it would devour every last one of them. Julia exploded in anger and demanded to know what it thought it was doing. A potion bottle suddenly dropped to the ground. Julia froze in shock. Even the Minotaur hesitated. The man laughed weakly and said the real nonsense was coming from it. Then, he unleashed his ice magic and ordered it to die. The Minotaur was frozen solid. The man urged them to leave at once and spread the warning. Mina quickly agreed. Lucas clenched his fists. He regretted that he couldn't save the man, but he swore to return and avenge him. The man screamed at them to run immediately. With his final breath, he declared that he had done everything he could. But a few seconds later, the Minotaur shattered the ice and broke free. Enraged that a mere insect dared ambush it, the monster roared. It devoured the soldier in one motion. Before it could finish, lightning struck its body. The Minotaur howled in pain. Julia shouted that the man wasn't an insect. He was a true warrior. Maya and Lucas stared at her in shock. The soldier's body fell. Maya caught him with her water magic. Then Mina launched a wind bomb. Lucas grabbed Julia, hoisted her up, and sprinted away. Mina yelled at Julia, furious that the man had sacrificed himself for them to escape, yet she had rushed back toward the fight. Lucas told them he would hold the monster back while Mina escaped to report everything. Mina snapped back that it was a Calamity-class monster. There was no way a first-year like him could stall it. Lucas knew she was right. Then a massive boulder crashed down in front of them. The Minotaur roared, determined to slaughter them all. Lucas told them to leave it to him and run. But Mina stepped forward and ordered them to fall back. As vice president, she couldn't abandon her responsibility to protect everyone. Lucas had always thought she was cold and calculating. Now he realized she had far more courage than he expected. Julia shook her head and said there was no way she could run away and leave Mina behind. Maya added that she had already used her magic to contact Kai and told him to call for rescue at the cave entrance. They were getting help. Until then, they would fight together. The Minotaur's veins bulged as rage flooded its body. They launched their attacks, fully aware that even together, defeating a Calamity-class monster was impossible. Lucas told them to trust one another. Then he charged forward, moving like a flash of light, shouting that they would never lose to a monster like this. The Minotaur raised its axe and slammed it into the ground. It sensed Lucas closing in. Lucas drove his fist straight into its face. That only enraged the monster further. Mina shouted for him to keep applying pressure. While he held it back, she would attack as well. The Minotaur sneered and called them worthless insects. Then it froze. Behind them, a massive magic circle flared to life. Julia stood at its center, her spell fully prepared. She screamed at the monster to stop bullying her brother. A bolt of lightning crashed down. The Minotaur was scorched black. Lucas dashed around it. He kicked its legs and struck its lower body again and again. The monster roared in pain. Lucas struck a pressure point, halting its movement. He shouted the signal to the others. Julia fired a thunder arrow while Mina released her wind cutter. They struck at the same time. Purple lightning and blue energy collided, ripping through the battlefield in a violent explosion. The ground shattered as power poured down from above, turning the entire cave into chaos. The blast slammed into the Minotaur and sent it flying. It crashed into the cave wall, stone exploding outward on impact. The monster cursed them. It swore it would kill them all the moment its legs recovered. Maya didn't give it that chance. She hurled a water ball and expanded it, drenching the Minotaur in a cascading waterfall. Maya stayed focused. The Minotaur drove its axe into the ground. It prepared to charge. Its legs had already healed. It laughed, claiming that a little water wouldn't harm it at all. It locked onto Maya and vowed to eat her alive. Julia coldly asked what it thought would happen when a creature soaked in water was struck by lightning. After killing so many soldiers, it would pay with its life. She unleashed multiple layers of lightning at once, each strike stacked on the last, tearing through the tower. Ground in a violent cascade of crackling purple energy. The lightning ripped through the Minotaur, forcing a raw, agonized scream from its throat. Lucas finally understood. The water had been used to amplify the lightning. That was the end. The Minotaur collapsed onto its back, completely still. Lucas watched Julia from a distance. For her to devise a strategy like that under pressure proved it. She truly was a top student. He hardened his hand with his power and lunged, aiming straight for the Minotaur's heart. Mina noticed a faint red glow flicker across its body. A strange aura began leaking from the Minotaur. Lucas was caught completely off guard. An overwhelming pressure crashed down on him. His strike stopped short. A mark flared to life on the Minotaur's chest, blocking the blow. Before he could react, his hand was seized. The Minotaur slowly raised its head and curled its lips into a sinister smile. At the same time, outside the cave, Kai suddenly froze. He felt the ground tremble beneath his feet. Realizing something was wrong, he sprinted off to call for reinforcements at once. All he could do now was pray that everyone inside could hold on. The Minotaur reared back, its body twisting as red energy tore through its chest. The impact was violent that Lucas was flung high into the air above it. He was sent flying, eyes wide as a red-black force slammed straight into him. He crashed into the ground at full speed, the impact exploding outward in a brutal shockwave. Dust, blood, and debris blasted into the air, showing just how savagely he had been thrown. The monster loomed above him, pouring down crushing red energy like deadly rain. Lucas stared up from the ground, muscles locked as the pressure closed in. Blood ran from his ear. He couldn't believe it. He was injured just from sensing its aura. That thing had grown absurdly powerful. He forced himself to check on everyone. Mina managed to raise a mute magic circle, but it shattered almost instantly. Blood streamed from her eyes and ears. She collapsed soon after, along with Maya and Julia. Seeing them like that, rage flooded Lucas's chest. Golden energy wrapped around him as he pushed himself up, lightning-like arcs spiraling from his body. He planted his feet, clearly gathering power for a counterattack. The monster threw its head back and roared, its black body writhing as red energy leaked and pulsed across its surface. Lucas charged at the speed of light and met the Minotaur's fist head-on. He came crashing down from above, his punch wrapped in blazing golden energy, smashing straight into the monster's body and driving the force deep inside. He swore he would kill it. The monster was caught completely off guard. Lucas's follow-up punches shattered its arm into pieces. Blood sprayed from its shoulder as Lucas prepared to strike again. He moved instantly, aiming for the other arm. The Minotaur swung back at him. Lucas realized something was wrong. It didn't seem to feel pain at all. What he saw next made his heart sink. Red mist swirled around the severed side of the monster. The arm was regenerating. In moments, it returned to its original state, strong enough to swing the axe like nothing had happened. Lucas leapt back as the monster brought its weapon down. Just the wind pressure made him cough up blood. The monster looked irritated, clearly frustrated by how much damage Lucas had dealt earlier. The Minotaur admitted his strength, saying the blood of a powerful one made its heart race. The punch landed and detonated, erupting into a violent explosion. The ground burst upward in jagged shards as the impact swallowed everything at the center. The shockwave tore through the cave, flinging Lucas away as the walls cracked and debris filled the air. Lucas ran along the walls, forcing himself back into the fight. The monster shot forward in a blur, red energy streaming from its eyes like streaks of light. It moved so fast, its body nearly smeared into shadow, closing the distance in an instant. It grabbed its axe and swung at Lucas. The ground ripped apart violently as the impact tore through it. Rocks and debris blasted into the air, showing just how destructive the clash had become. The force of it made the ceiling collapse. The situation turned dire. The falling rocks were crashing toward everyone. Lucas moved instantly. As the rocks were about to crush the girls, one massive slab was inches from Julia's face. Lucas arrived just in time and punched straight through it. Debris exploded in all directions. Relief washed over him when he saw the three of them were safe. Then his eyes widened as he sensed an overwhelming power pouring out of the Minotaur. It opened its mouth and unleashed a beam. The sound-based attack was terrifyingly powerful. Lucas struggled to defend himself. The roar echoed off the collapsed cave walls, amplifying its force. Smoke flooded the area, destroying visibility. Lucas coughed up blood, and in that brief moment of weakness, the Minotaur seized its chance and swung the axe at him. Blood dripped from the axe. The Minotaur froze when its strike failed to break through. It sneered and said using aura as defense was a clever trick. It mocked Lucas, telling him to stop his pointless resistance. It claimed that he, and the little girls behind him, would all die there. It roared, and Lucas's golden aura flared even stronger. Lucas forced the axe downward, shocking the Minotaur. Then he warned it to say those words only after it defeated him. The Minotaur was stunned by his sudden movement. Lucas ripped the axe from its grip. He warned the beast that as long as he was alive, it would never lay a single finger on Julia or the others. The Minotaur snapped its head around. In that instant, the axe slammed straight into its face. The Minotaur groaned in pain. Lucas seized the horn that broke off and slashed it across the monster's body. It could only groan again. Lucas tossed the horn aside and stepped back. Then he turned around and drove a punch straight into its gut. The Minotaur grew furious. It grabbed Lucas by the legs and slammed him into the ground. It struck him again and again, then hurled him away. The Minotaur suddenly froze. It had lost another limb. Lucas stood there holding its torn-off arm. Red lines crawled across his body. The arm regenerated once more. The monster charged, but our MC was prepared for it. Lucas met its fist with his own. The collision blasted debris everywhere. The Minotaur acknowledged his strength, saying this was how a warrior should fight. It urged Lucas to keep attacking. It was briefly startled when Lucas leapt into the air. Lucas was resolved to kill. Red symbols flooded the darkness as violent power surged inward, swallowing everything at the center. His eyes burned with madness, as if something inside him had completely snapped. A massive pillar of red erupted as Lucas punched the Minotaur, making it roar in agony. The power smashed into the ground like a blood-red judgment, shaking everything around them. It coughed up blood, utterly confused by how this was possible. Lucas vanished in a blur, and unleashed another attack. A terrifying red beam crashed down onto the monster. The impact was so strong, it could be felt even outside the cave. A piece of debris struck Julia's head. The tremors jolted them awake. Maya hurriedly checked to see if they were still alive. Julia searched desperately for her brother. Her eyes went wide. Lucas's fist was buried deep in the monster's flesh. A fountain of blood erupted, and blood rained down over him. Julia saw her brother standing on top of the monster. Worry gripped her chest as she stared at him. Red mist swallowed Lucas. His arm turned black as red lightning coiled around it, the transformation climbing up to his shoulders. A Minotaur-shaped mark appeared on his body. Meanwhile, in the Chamber of Rage, it was a realm flooded with lava. Above the molten sea stood massive statues bound together by heavy chains. The lava boiled violently. Cracks spread across the statues as the heat intensified. A hand suddenly rose from the lava. The creature fully emerged, its silhouette revealing massive wings and towering horns. It was a colossal bull-like demon, its body packed with thick, corded muscles. Dark red skin split apart by glowing cracks of heat, massive curved horns, a fanged, gaping maw, and blazing crimson eyes. Flames and embers rolled endlessly from its body, like a living furnace born from pure wrath. It laughed, pleased to finally return to this filthy, defiled world. It called out to the war god. This being was Varsaba, the demon lord of wrath. He swore to tear the war god apart limb by limb. A woman sat calmly on one of the chains. She had green hair, and a green snake coiled lazily around her arm. She was Vershita, the demon lord of jealousy. She told him that he had awakened because of the rage of the key they had chosen. He scoffed. He asked whether that vessel truly had potential as he settled onto a throne. She scoffed back. The surface of the lava shifted, revealing Lucas's battle. She told him that even now, the boy was breaking free from his restraints. Meanwhile, Lucas no longer looked like himself. His aura forced the Minotaur deeper into the ground. He adjusted his stance, preparing to fight again. He raised his fist, but Julia suddenly rushed forward and hugged him, begging him to stop. Maya cast magic on him, trying to calm him down. She was startled by his reaction. He was on the verge of unleashing his full power, so she shouted at Julia to step back. Lucas swung his fist. Julia was already crying as she screamed his name. Her tears fell onto him, and deep within his fractured consciousness, he saw her face. Her tears disturbed him more than anything else. Then, an explosion erupted. Julia stared as the smoke slowly cleared. She called out to her big brother. The black stain covering Lucas's body began to fade. Still teary-eyed, Julia approached him. Lucas spoke, saying his consciousness had returned, but he asked her to step away for a moment. She nodded and agreed. He took a deep breath. Golden aura flooded his entire body. Even his eyes glowed with gold. The golden aura shot up to the ceiling. The mark on his back slowly began to fade. Maya approached him. Julia ran straight to him, asking if he was okay. Lucas smiled faintly and told her he was fine. She broke down, crying as she yelled that he had scared her terribly. Lucas apologized and promised her that he would never let something like that happen again. Just then, a message came through from Kai. He had already brought reinforcements and was on his way. Far away, Varsaba was left speechless. Vershita calmly told him there was no need to rush. The key still needed to pass several trials. One of those trials, she said, was losing one's family, and her gaze settled on Julia. The scene then shifted when someone was shaking Lucas awake. He wondered who it was. When he opened his eyes, he saw his father, his mother, and Julia. Julia's face lit up the moment she saw him wake. He sat up and asked where he was. Suddenly, sharp pain stabbed through him. Before he realized it, he swung his fist at them. Lucas froze. His body was moving on its own again. Panic flooded him as he called out to his father, his mother, and Julia. Someone groaned and shouted, "What the hell?" Lucas jolted awake. He was at the Allen Magic Academy. Apparently, he had punched Kai in his sleep. Kai yelled at him, complaining that he just got beaten up while already injured. Lucas immediately apologized. Kai stormed off, muttering about how much it hurt. Lucas lay back, confused by the dream. He suspected the strange power from the cave was affecting him. The feeling was familiar. It reminded him of when the dead bandit had turned into a monster. He thought about how he lost control again. And this time, when Julia and Maya tried to stop him, he had already lost his sanity. When he fought the Minotaur, that power had clearly been eroding his consciousness. All he remembered was pure anger. That realization unsettled him. Maybe his mind had been corrupted because he let anger take control. But could he really suppress his anger in the middle of a real fight? That thought led him to consider having someone stay close to him during battles, someone who could hold him back if he lost control. He kept thinking. He pushed himself, squeezing every idea he could come up with. But none of them worked. During missions or training, the only people he could rely on were fellow students. And having someone try to restrain him while he was berserk would be far too dangerous. Then, a thought struck him. If no one else could stop him, then he would stop himself. Meanwhile, Shigart walked down the academy hallway. Nearby, nurses whispered to each other, saying one of the patients was finally out of danger. They wondered how an upperclassman could get so badly injured during a school mission. Shigart overheard them. The nurses continued gossiping, saying Mina had been covering for some underclassmen. Apparently, she even brought along 2 deadweight martial artists, so it was no surprise she ended up hurt. Suddenly, a powerful aura burst from a door ahead. Shigart stiffened, alarmed by the presence of a high-ranking martial artist. The nurses gasped, confused as a strong wind swept through the hallway, even though all the windows were closed. Shigart vanished without a trace, leaving only his liquor bottle behind on the floor. Back to our MC. Lucas stayed focused on his aura. By the time he relaxed, he looked completely drained. Still, he felt relieved. His clone technique had worked. He examined it carefully. According to an old book he had read in the library, a clone could possess at most half of the original's strength. If he created 3 clones, that power would be split evenly. Each one would only have 1/6 of his full strength. He dismissed the clone. It was too weak to restrain him if he went berserk. At best, they could buy him enough time to escape. Suddenly, he sensed someone nearby. Professor Shigart. Shigart spoke calmly, saying that from the entrance exam to the training tournament, and even the magical beast mission, strange incidents always seemed to follow Lucas. Then he asked him bluntly, what was he really? And why had he come to their school? Lucas was left speechless. Silence filled the room. Lucas pretended nothing was wrong. He said his only reason for coming to Allen Magic Academy was to master martial arts and become stronger. Someone moved. Shigart slapped him. He scoffed, saying he didn't believe that excuse. If Lucas wanted to talk about becoming stronger, then he should show his true strength first. Lucas asked what he meant. He realized then just how sharp Shigart was. If someone like him truly acknowledged him, life at the academy would become much easier. Someone suddenly arrived and asked who Shigart was. Shigart blinked and said he had completely forgotten. It was a holiday, so guardians were free to enter the campus. Catherine had arrived, with Julia beside her. Catherine firmly asked Shigart to step away from her son. Lucas quickly explained that he was Teacher Shigart, the homeroom teacher of the martial arts department. He said the teacher had simply been giving him guidance while he visited a sick friend. He added that Shigart told him it was fine to confront strong enemies head-on. Shigart felt annoyed. It sounded like sarcasm. He also noticed that Lucas seemed to sense his presence long before he arrived. Catherine nodded in understanding. She knew it was Shigart's day off and expected him to be resting instead. Shigart understood the message. She was telling him to leave. He sighed. Since Lucas hadn't caused any serious trouble, and as long as he remained his homeroom teacher, Shigart would make sure he didn't cause any in the future either. With that, he excused himself. Then Catherine gently told Lucas not to be stubborn, and anger his teacher. She then explained that while they were trapped in the dungeon, she had stayed at the Miranda residence and waited until everything settled. She wanted to see them as soon as possible. Julia was shocked. She hadn't realized her mother had been nearby for days. Julia's eyes welled up as she said she wanted to see her sooner too. She started pouting and throwing a small tantrum, telling Lucas to do something. Lucas asked if their father was with her. Catherine shook her head. She said the front lines weren't going well, so he sent her to the Mirandas for safety before returning to the war. Lucas understood. The Miranda family accepted his mother, but they still refused to acknowledge his father. Truly a stubborn family of wizards. Catherine then smiled and said she had a gift from their father. She congratulated Lucas for taking first place in the entrance exam. Lucas was stunned. She revealed the gift. The Ryan family's treasured holy sword. It had been damaged decades ago during the war against the Beastmen army and was too difficult to fully repair. Even so, it remained a priceless family heirloom. She told him that his father had high hopes for him. Lucas stared in awe. He promised that he would not disappoint him. Julia crossed her arms, muttering that he was so lucky. Catherine noticed her reaction. She sighed, then burst out laughing. Julia looked confused as both Catherine and Lucas laughed together. Lucas patted Julia's head and told her that their mother loved her the most. Catherine smiled and said she had a present for her too. She handed Julia beast-shaped candy. And on top of that, she had baked sweets just for her. Julia immediately started drooling. She jumped in excitement and screamed, "I love you!" as she hugged her tightly. Then she happily started eating the sweets. After that, Catherine remembered something. She said they needed to deliver an item to Jeremy later. Apparently, their father had prepared a beast core as a gift for him. Since Jessica wasn't around today, Catherine was holding on to it for now. Julia frowned. She didn't like Jeremy, but she still agreed to give it to him. Catherine praised her for being such a good girl. Julia puffed out her chest, looking extremely proud. At the boys' dormitory, Jeremy was informed that he had a visitor. He went out and met Julia. Several students nearby noticed them and immediately started gossiping. They recognized Julia and grew curious about why she had come to see him. One of them overheard her introducing herself as his sister. They were stunned. They couldn't believe a genius like her was related to him. When Jeremy returned, one of his classmates joked that he should bring Julia along on missions someday. Jeremy slapped his hand away. Then he pointed vines at him in warning. The others were confused by his reaction. Jeremy felt bitter inside. His parents had never come to visit him. And now Lucas had been given a holy sword just for placing first in the entrance exam. To Jeremy, Lucas was nothing but trash, so he couldn't understand why everyone adored him so much. His jealousy twisted into hatred, and in his heart, he swore to take everything back from him. A few hours later, Catherine waved goodbye to them. The warm reunion passed in the blink of an eye, and their mother returned to the Miranda estate. However, she will be staying in Daku Town for a while. Even if they couldn't meet every day, just knowing their mother was nearby made both Lucas and Julia happy. As for Mina, who had suffered severe injuries, Lucas refined a new medicinal pill for her. When it was presented as a gift from the Miranda family, even its unbelievable effects were accepted without question. Everyone simply regarded it as another miracle of noble magic medicine. Mina herself was deeply impressed. Half a month passed in no time. They gathered at the Allen Tower. Everyone stared in awe. Kai commented that it was no surprise it was called the symbol of the school, since it shone just like him. Lucas said their reaction was a bit exaggerated, considering they had already seen the tower since enrolling. The three of them laughed it off. Someone suddenly cleared their throat. All three stiffened. Shigart told them to quiet down. He hadn't brought them there for fun. He ordered everyone to sit in their assigned seats. Some students were clearly unhappy that so many from the martial arts department had shown up. They whispered among themselves, mocking that only a few martial artists had any real skill, yet they were dreaming far beyond their status. Kai clenched his fists. He could hear them belittling the martial arts department again. Lucas quietly told him to calm down. Ever since the Allen Tower was announced, the martial arts department had become an obvious target. To the other students, they were just people who had, luckily, secured 20 entry slots. Some first-year magic instructors had even protested to the principal, claiming that martial artists were useless to the Empire and demanding the slots be revoked. The audacity was staggering. Still, Lucas noticed that Shigart didn't seem worried at all. He wondered if it was because the professor trusted the school and the principal that much. The students took their seats. Shigart told them to listen carefully. Every year, third-year students entered the Allen Tower first, serving as examples for the newer students. The third years were instructed to prepare. One of the third-year students was visibly excited. After 3 years since enrolling, he was finally going to enter the Allen Tower. Everyone else knew why. He had never once made it into the top 100. That student was Jeremy. Julia spotted him and called out his name. Jeremy's classmates were delighted to see her. Julia waved at Jeremy, smiling as she told him to do his best. Seeing his sister cheering for him, his classmates nudged him and told him not to disappoint her. Jeremy's face flushed red. Julia frowned. She was annoyed that he barely reacted, even though she had gone out of her way to encourage him, especially since her mother had told her to. Still, she decided it was fine. She had already done what she was asked. Meanwhile, one of Jeremy's classmates quietly wished he could transfer somewhere closer to her. Jeremy replied that he had been very lucky lately, so there was nothing to worry about. In his heart, he was determined to surpass Lucas. The third-year students headed inside. They were instructed to place their magic staff in front of them and close their eyes. As soon as the voice spoke, Jeremy felt a strange familiarity. It was something he had heard before. Meanwhile, Director Otani watched from a massive screen. He looked thrilled. It had finally begun. He activated a device. Golden gears and interlocking rings spun together, glowing as streams of energy poured into the mechanism. It hummed with precise, overwhelming power as the system awakened. Otani's eyes shone. Golden light surged through the hall as enormous magical gears roared to life. A barrier snapped into place around the students, and energy flooded the chamber like a controlled explosion. The golden mechanism reached its peak, forming a blazing core at the center. Light burst outward in every direction, as if the device had fully awakened. The gears kept spinning, and the entire tower was soon wrapped in golden radiance. Lucas, waiting outside, saw it all. He felt an immense fighting spirit pouring out of the tower. The sensation shocked him. He hadn't expected to find a Tao master stronger than his own teacher. Now he finally understood why Shigert had been so confident the night before. It was likely because only the strongest martial artist could open the gates of the Allen Tower. A few moments before the exam, someone was quietly having tea at a gazebo. The headmaster spoke, noting that complaints about the martial arts department's admission quota had been growing louder recently. He wanted a detailed explanation of what had actually happened during the last abnormal incident. Director Otani paused mid-sip. He set the teacup down with a sharp clack and reminded the headmaster that he had already stated there were no abnormalities that caused any losses to the school. For now, Otani said, everything should remain exactly as it was. If the status quo was maintained, the Allen Tower would open as scheduled. The meaning was clear. If the martial arts department wasn't given a chance, then no one would be allowed to enter the Allen Tower. The headmaster felt the weight of the problem pressing heavily on him. Back inside the Allen Tower, Jeremy landed smoothly on the ground. It felt as if only his consciousness had entered the space, yet everything was indistinguishable from reality. Even the magic staff in his hand felt exactly the same as the one he always used. Seeing his reaction, one of his classmates laughed and said it was obvious this was his first time. He explained that the most amazing thing about the Allen Tower was how real everything felt. Another classmate cut in, telling them to stop chatting and hurry to regroup with their teammates. Jeremy noticed something odd. They were far too relaxed. Someone was watching them, carefully observing their every move. That person was Lucas. He found it interesting that even from outside the tower, he could sense fluctuations in mental energy and roughly tell what the students inside were doing. A faint smirk appeared on his face. It would be a shame, he thought, if Jeremy didn't get a taste of his own medicine. Shigert noticed his expression. He said calmly that anyone with sufficient skill could sense mental energy and observe the trial from outside. Then he began explaining the rules. Once the trial began, participants would be sent to random locations within the space. They could act alone or form teams. It was entirely up to them. Teams could have up to 3 members, and if they wanted to reach the upper floors, moving in groups was strongly recommended. Kai assumed that he and Lucas would be teaming up. He asked whether Collins or Sharp would be joining them. Lucas shook his head. Judging by the training competition rankings, the 3 of them would likely be assigned to different groups. Kai joked that his grades were probably too good, so he'd end up going solo. Shigart remembered the look on Lucas's face earlier. From that alone, he could tell Lucas was sensing the mental energy inside the tower. Linda commented that only 5 students in the elite department were capable of doing that. That made Shigart even more suspicious of Lucas. Just then, students began emerging from the tower. They were 3rd years. Kai was stunned by how quickly they had been eliminated. Shigart explained that the illusionary enemies inside the Allen Tower adjusted their strength based on the student's ability. Every year, some students underestimated that fact and were forced to drop out almost immediately. Lucas focused his senses, checking on Jeremy. Inside the central tower, Jeremy climbed the staircase with his teammates. Lucas could tell that he had regrouped successfully and was heading toward the 2nd floor. In Lucas's eyes, Jeremy had gotten lucky. They reached the 2nd floor and continued deeper inside. Unseen, shapes moved within the shadows. Creatures suddenly leapt at them. They had blue skin, feral features, sharp fangs, glowing red eyes, and wild, swept-back hair. Jeremy sensed them instantly and bound them with magic. One teammate followed up with a soil wave. The creatures were swallowed and crushed by the earth. Each elite skeleton warrior they defeated earned them 10 points. They quickly realized the rumors were true. The 2nd floor was dangerous. The blue-haired member suggested moving while they still had mana and stamina. They pushed forward and reached the central area of the 2nd floor. Jeremy took down a beastman scout, earning 5 points. Another teammate unleashed a water knife, cutting down 2 skeleton warriors for 5 points each. The blue-haired teammate was so focused that he failed to notice a monster approaching from behind. A teammate struck it with sand magic. Together, they defeated another elite skeleton warrior, earning 10 more points. They were relieved to finally reach the 3rd floor, even though they were eliminated shortly after. The group tried to stay positive, convinced they wouldn't end up dead last this time. But Jeremy looked disappointed. One of his teammates noticed and asked if something was wrong. Jeremy said he was happy, but his expression told a different story. Now, he understood the kind of enemies his father had always faced. And for the first time, he felt like he had taken one step closer to him, a few hours later. Lucas continued observing the inside of the tower. Using spiritual energy sensing, he clearly grasped the situation up to the 3rd floor of the Allen Tower. In the trials, phantom enemies with different traits appeared each time. Even enemies of the same type grew stronger as they climbed higher floors. It made him wonder if those phantoms were created using real bodies that existed somewhere in reality. If that were true, then the martial artist who opened the Allen Tower must have accumulated terrifying levels of combat experience. And like Shigart, Lucas knew that person was fully aware of his own strength. But for now, everyone was simply watching in silence. Lucas couldn't tell if that silence came from goodwill or pressure. The last group was called to assemble at the entrance. It was finally time. The first group had already advanced to the 4th floor entrance. Mina and her team, who achieved the best results in the taming competition, would surely catch up soon. Julia wished her luck. Mina smiled and thanked her. The teacher asked Mina about her injury. She replied that it had completely healed. Hearing that, The teacher relaxed and told her to do her best. The other students were impressed. She was close to the freshman genius and favored by the teachers. It made sense. She had become vice president in her second year. They whispered that her skills were unmatched, except for the president back then, though she lacked popularity. Mina heard them bad-mouthing her again. Instead of getting angry, it strengthened her resolve to reach the 6th floor and break Theodore's old record. At the Allen Tower's 3rd floor, the environment was eerie and filled with lava. A hulking, pink-skinned monster stood there, with an oversized, rock-hard arm raised to strike. Its twisted face bulged with veins, hollow yellow eyes staring ahead, jagged fangs exposed. Mina dove forward over the lava, twisting midair as blue energy streamed behind her. Monsters below were knocked back, scrambling as her path cut cleanly through the chaos. She ordered her teammates to avoid unnecessary fights and use acceleration magic to reach the 4th floor as fast as possible. They moved without hesitation. They reached the 4th floor in under 30 minutes, just as expected of the strongest group of 3rd years. Kai, who was casually chewing on bread, noticed Lucas's serious expression and offered him some. Mina's team finally arrived on the 4th floor of the Allen Tower. 2 massive, purple-skinned brutes towered over Mina. One rested a huge club on its shoulder, while the other stood close behind. Their red eyes glowed in the darkness as they blocked her path, making the danger immediate. Mina's female teammate identified them as elite beastmen of the 4th floor. They were twice the size of those on the 3rd floor. The male teammate immediately understood why most students dropped out here. Mina activated Wind Cutter Flash. After defeating the elite beastman, she gained plus 80 points. Her female teammate stared in awe at how fast it ended. The male teammate muttered that the rumors were true. Mina's strength had improved drastically during the last mission. Instant kills were the best way to save time. Compared to the Minotaur earlier, these beastmen were nothing. She told her teammates to handle the cleanup while she searched for the passage to the 5th floor and hunted down the remaining enemies. They continued eliminating beastman scouts, earning plus 40 points each time. Another scout fell, granting plus 40 more points. 2 beastman scouts were swept up and crushed inside her tornado. Eventually, they defeated the last one. Mina let out a quiet breath of relief. They had finally reached the 5th floor. Someone outside the Allen Tower was monitoring the status. Shigart announced that 3 people had reached the 5th floor. It was already better than last year. Kai wondered aloud if he would ever make it there himself. Shigart told him there was no need to rush. For a first year, reaching the 3rd floor was already more than enough, and if they steadily improved their skills, the enemies on the 5th floor wouldn't seem so frightening anymore. Lucas realized then that Shigart had entered the Allen Tower before. Suddenly, both of them tensed. Lucas guessed that Shigart must have attempted something inside the tower in the past. At that moment, someone emerged from the entrance. It was Mina and her team. The students waiting outside immediately gathered around and asked how it went. Lucas could tell she hadn't reached her goal. Her eyes were red, tears barely held back. Meanwhile, inside an office, Theodore watched everything through a floating globe. He spoke calmly, almost coldly. Now, Mina finally understood that surpassing a true genius was never easy. A few moments later, we see Julia set off a few small fireworks. They were having a meal together with Mina, and Julia congratulated her for taking first place in the 3rd year trial. Lucas clapped as well after hearing that she had reached the 5th floor. Mina thanked them, but she didn't look happy. In the end, she still couldn't beat Theodore's record. Julia tried to comfort her, saying that President Theodore had also stopped at the 5th floor, so technically it was a tie. Mina shook her head and explained that by the time she saw the stairs leading to the 6th floor, she couldn't even stand anymore. But Theodore, back then, still climbed the stairs and reached the door to the 6th floor. In other words, compared to him at that time, she was inferior in stamina, strategy, magical control, everything. She then asked if they had already found their team members. Julia proudly said she would be teaming up with Iwa. Iwa agreed, since her father had ordered it. Lucas realized that the news of the Miranda family acknowledging Julia had already reached Iwa as well. He replied that he would be teaming up with Sharp and Collins. Julia was surprised. She asked about Kai and whether they had fought. Lucas explained that their rankings were completely different, so they were placed in separate groups. Earlier in the classroom, Kai had been clinging to Lucas's leg, shouting that he abandoned him. He called him heartless and made such a scene that everyone was staring. He was crying because he had no one to team up with. That was when Tishy invited him to join her group. They were looking for a strong tank, and they would be happy to have him. Kai immediately stood up and cleared his throat. He put on a cool expression and said he would team up with them since they insisted. Lucas was impressed by how quickly he switched attitudes, just like always. At the training grounds, Shigart observed that everyone had found a partner. He raised his voice and told them to get fired up, especially knowing what others were saying behind their backs. Many students expected them to drop out immediately, laughing just at the thought of it. The martial arts students clenched their fists in anger. Shigart pointed out that no one there intended to make those insults come true. He watched their reactions. Tishy spoke up first. She declared that they would train with everything they had to make sure that never happened. Her teammate immediately backed her up, saying they would prove they deserved their admission slots to the Allen Tower with their own strength. The atmosphere ignited. Lucas noticed how Shigart kept insisting that the Allen Tower trial would proceed as scheduled. He didn't just block out the insults aimed at the martial arts students. He turned them into fuel. The pressure became motivation, and their rebellious spirit was pushed to the surface. It worked perfectly. The phantom enemies inside the Allen Tower were varied and highly intelligent. Kai sparred with Lucas. Then someone moved at incredible speed. It was Tishy. She jumped into the fight. Because of how the phantom enemies worked, they trained repeatedly in groups to improve coordination and teamwork. And between training sessions, Shigard explained the traits and habits of different species. Sometimes he even played the role of the enemy himself. He put on monster masks and fought them directly. It was Linda who suggested that he teach by acting like a beastman. Every day was brutally exhausting. Yet not a single student complained. Kai, in particular, was fired up. He swore to climb to the top of the Allen Tower and make a name for himself. Then the day of the freshman trial finally arrived. A notice was posted on the bulletin board. It stated that the martial arts department's results in the magical beast taming tournament were valid, and their right to participate in the Allen Tower trial was officially confirmed. The students stepped forward. They did so with confidence. Shigard instructed them that once inside, they were to regroup with their teams at the central staircase. When they ran, they were to run without hesitation. And if they couldn't run, they were to fight like their lives depended on it, and take down at least one enemy. Off to the side, some students whispered among themselves. They mocked that even the martial arts department's homeroom teacher didn't truly trust his students' abilities. They eagerly waited for the entertaining sight of martial artists facing magical beasts with their so-called true strength. Some even placed bets, claiming the martial arts department would all drop out within 3 minutes. Kai scoffed and said the howling of losers was hard to listen to. Lucas felt a strange sense of pride. Kai didn't explode in anger this time. He really had matured, at least a little. The instructor called out 12 names and told them to follow him. Lucas, Collins, and Sharp stepped forward. Director Otani watched everything through a screen. It had been many years since so many martial artists entered the Allen Tower. He murmured that the legacy left behind by the god of war for future generations might finally fulfill its purpose. Now, the only question left was whether they were ready to face the first trial of their lives. Inside the tower, the students started running. Someone suddenly leapt toward a tree. It was Lucas. He saw that everyone was heading for the central staircase while avoiding enemies, exactly as their teacher instructed. All he needed to do was move in the opposite direction. The first floor of the tower was mostly goblin territory. He had heard that goblins used magic to block vision before attacking. Now he saw them. He planned to regroup with his teammates as soon as he finished testing something. A creature lurked behind him. A goblin locked onto Lucas as he ran. Lucas thought quickly. When his clones killed enemies, no point notification appeared. At the same time, he felt a strange sense of familiarity from the phantom energy forming the enemies inside the Allen Tower. Then he realized it was the same energy used to create his clones. That meant the phantom enemies were likely created by the same martial artist who opened the Allen Tower. If his clones shared the same energy nature as the phantoms, they shouldn't be detected even if he used his cloning skill. He could have his clones protect his teammates while his real body pushed upward through the tower. In his mind, the plan was flawless. Then another idea struck him. If the energy was truly the same, he could alter his clones' appearance into that of magical beasts. He tested it, and confirmed he could change their forms at will. With that, Lucas could now move freely inside the tower. At the same time, Director Otani continued watching from afar. He knew Lucas often visited the library in secret to read martial arts books, but even so, he hadn't expected him to master cloning this quickly. Otani was curious to see what Lucas would do next. Would he earn points for his classmates again this time? At the same time, he knew that helping too much would only hold them back. He wondered if Lucas understood that. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the forest, someone screamed for a giant to stay away. The students kept running. The goblins chased after them. One of them started complaining. That student was stuck on top of a tree, surrounded by 3 magical beasts at once. The others hid behind another tree, unsure of what to do. With their current strength, they knew that even handling 2 goblins at the same time was their limit. They called out for help. Suddenly, a sound wave reached them. At first, it was barely noticeable. Then a calm voice told them to relax and explained that the giant couldn't see them because of the fog. The message came from a fellow student nearby. He explained that the giants on the first floor were slow and had low intelligence. He told them to keep their distance from the giant and focus on dealing with the goblins instead. They ran. Soon after, they were forced into a fight with the goblins. One of them was driven backward. A goblin shoved its sword down toward him. At that moment, someone rushed in and swung their blade. The strike severed the goblin's leg. The student who had been pushed down seized the opening and stabbed it. The goblin grabbed his sword mid-thrust. It flung the weapon aside. Then it lunged at him. His teammate stepped in and shouted for him to dodge. The goblin's sharp claws had already broken through. He ducked and stabbed again. The goblin was sent flying to the side. The student stared in disbelief. He had killed it. He finally understood what their teacher meant. If the 3 of them worked together, they could clear the first floor. Confidence surged through them as they turned to face the remaining goblin. Lucas watched from afar. He knew that victory wasn't only about raw strength. Calm judgment and courage mattered just as much. He was using his clones to guide and pressure his classmates. He didn't see it as cheating. He wanted them to experience the joy of battle for themselves during this trial. Greg watched the Allen Tower. he scoffed. He looked down on Shigart for leading a squad that mixed magic users with 3 martial arts students. Lila commented that their luck was terrible. Andre added that even with 3 people fighting together, they were already being pushed to their limits. In his eyes, there was no way some martial arts weaklings could handle that. They fully expected them to drop out soon. Deep down, Greg believed that even if the martial arts department managed to secure entry slots, all they would do was embarrass themselves. He thought Shigart was shameless to the point that it was painful to even watch. Shigart, however, observed calmly. They were facing 3 enemies. If they stayed composed, they still had a chance. Suddenly, a surge of energy rippled through the area. It shocked everyone. Greg stiffened. He couldn't understand what had just happened. The goblin fell. The situation had completely reversed. The students were now the ones hunting the goblins. One goblin suddenly inhaled deeply. The sight terrified the students. It released thick fog, trying to escape. One of the students chased after it. He activated Piercing Peak Thrust. His dagger pierced straight through the goblin's arm. The force knocked it off balance. The violet-haired student followed up immediately with Spiral Slash. The goblin staggered back, barely staying upright. The student wielding a long wooden staff stepped forward. He took his stance, then unleashed breath-severing lightning. The goblin scout collapsed. They earned 10 points. Greg was stunned and irritated. The martial arts department had defeated 2 high-level goblins far faster than he expected. Shigart smiled. He praised them for their clean execution. Turning to the class, Shigart announced that one team had already taken down 2 enemies. If they fought the way he taught them, the enemies inside the Allen Tower were nothing to fear. The class erupted into cheers. Seeing proof in front of them, their confidence soared. They were fired up and ready to give everything they had. A student from another class scoffed and muttered that it was just luck. A martial arts student shot back that they were just called weak earlier, and yet they still pulled it off. He stuck his tongue out, which only made the bully more irritated. Inside, Shigart frowned slightly. He had sensed a strange energy vanishing near those 3 just moments ago. He suspected Lucas had done something again. At the same time, Lucas sneezed loudly. He rubbed his nose, wondering if Julia was talking about him again. He could already picture her bragging about him. Someone nearby noticed him. It was Collins and Sharp. They were relieved to see him safe. Sharp said Lucas had been gone for so long that they were starting to worry. Lucas explained that he had been sent to a place much farther away than expected. He asked where everyone else was. They told him that one team still hadn't arrived, but the rest had already made it to the rendezvous point. When the class saw Lucas and his team, they were clearly happy. Lucas felt relieved when he saw how exhausted everyone was, and that no one had suffered any serious injuries. He thought of Slight. He expected them to arrive soon. Collins noticed the change in his expression and asked what was wrong. Lucas smiled and replied that it was nothing. Once everyone arrived, they would move on to the second floor. Meanwhile, outside, the students were discussing how not a single martial arts student had dropped out yet. They brushed it off, saying those guys were probably just good at running away. In their minds, the martial artists were just scrambling around in desperation. Andre asked Greg about the situation. Through clenched teeth, Greg answered that every single one of them had advanced to the second floor. Andre was stunned. He couldn't believe that all those so-called weaklings survived the first floor. Even the mage class lost students every year on the first floor. If the martial arts department kept growing like this, they would start stealing resources from the mage class. In his eyes, they were becoming a real threat. There was a tall, muscular creature with a skull-like head, a gaping mouth filled with sharp teeth, and a long tongue that lashed out in an unnatural way. Lucas stood calmly behind a tree, watching as the massive blue creature wandered around. He noticed that there were quite a lot of them roaming the area. From the second floor onward, teams were teleported to random locations based on their situation. As a team's overall strength increased, the difficulty of the trial increased as well. He needed to have his clones find the rest of his classmates as soon as possible. Something moved quickly. It was the wolf he had deployed. Sharp and Collins asked how things looked on his side. Lucas replied that there were many enemies, and most of them were clustered together in groups. It was the same on their side. Completely avoiding combat didn't seem possible. Lucas reminded them that the purpose of the Allen Tower trial was to gain combat experience. Collins realized that if they kept running the entire time, the trial would lose its meaning. Sharp agreed. Suddenly, something moved above them. It crashed down where Lucas had been standing, instantly worrying the 2 of them. Lucas answered that he was fine. He hadn't noticed that 2 enemies were already closing in. Sharp commented that if it had been him, he would have been taken out long ago. Our boy became serious. 2 ferocious wolves stood in front of him. One of them lunged forward, determined to tear him apart, but Lucas kept his eyes on it. As the other wolf charged, another wolf suddenly appeared behind it. Lucas immediately blasted it away. Then, he grabbed the leg of the wolf closest to him. He noticed that this wolf had used a feint and immediately called for allies. It was surprisingly crafty. He had already defeated the raccoon beastman's scout in the back, earning plus 10 points. Lucas told his teammates that they had to take that one down quickly. It was a vanguard, and more enemies would soon swarm in. Sharp had no idea what had just happened. Collins was confused when he realized his dagger was gone. He didn't say it out loud, but Lucas had grabbed it in a hurry earlier and accidentally thrown it away. Then, Lucas noticed something. He shouted that another enemy was approaching from beneath them. Sharp jumped in shock as something suddenly burst out of the ground. It was another wolf. Sharp immediately realized what the professor had meant. The enemies on the second floor were on a completely different level. They were stronger, smarter, and capable of ambushes, and they could even steal weapons. Sharp told the wolf that even if it stole his weapon, he didn't think it could do much with it. The wolf looked surprised. Suddenly, blood sprayed from its arm. Sharp was relieved that he had spent a huge amount of points on the rock dragon gauntlets. Apparently, he had managed to scratch it earlier. The wolf was startled. Sharp lunged forward and declared that when it came to strength, he wouldn't lose to anyone. The wolf barely managed to step back and evade his punch. Sharp called out to Collins. Collins sprinted behind the wolf. He answered that he was right there. It was finally his turn. He kicked the wolf hard at the nape. And while it was still mid-air, Sharp gathered all his strength into his fist. He pulled his arm back, ready to strike. He unleashed Rock Dragon Strike. Defeating the Raccoon Beastman Scout earned them plus 10 points. Lucas praised them for their excellent coordination. But when Collins turned to look at him, his face went pale. The wolf's head was buried deep into the wall. Lucas told them they couldn't stop now. For the sake of their department, they had to keep moving. Greg was growing impatient. It showed in the way his foot tapped against the ground without him realizing it. It had been a while, yet not a single student from the martial arts department had dropped out. Most of the spectators expected that, with their abilities, they would have been surrounded and killed the moment they reached the second floor. Andre began to wonder if the difficulty of the Allen Tower had been lowered because the martial arts department was simply too weak. But if that were true, the teachers would have protested long ago. Greg's brows knit together. By now, he was even biting his nails. He stared at the scene without blinking. Meanwhile, on the second floor of the Allen Tower, the fighting continued. The monster was a large, blue-skinned humanoid with a muscular body and a hunched posture. Sharp fangs lined its mouth, its ears were pointed, and its glowing, hostile eyes gave it a feral appearance. Lucas grabbed the monster by the head and slammed it into the ground. At the same time, Collins faced a skeleton wielding a sword. He ducked to evade the swing and took a deep breath. The skeleton's sword struck the ground. Collins stepped away in time. The skeleton froze in confusion. In the blink of an eye, it was slashed repeatedly. Its bones shattered into pieces. Unexpectedly, even with its arms and head still intact, it continued attacking. Sharp rushed in and finished it off. He asked how many they had taken down so far. Collins answered that they had already defeated 3, yet strangely, he didn't feel tired at all. Quietly, Lucas activated Heroic War Cry. In an instant, Sharp felt power surging through his body again. Collins felt like he could push even further. Everyone had reached the second floor without a single injury. If Lucas used Heroic War Cry, a support technique passed down through the Ryan family, they would definitely be able to clear the second floor. Elsewhere, the team in Area B was under attack by 3 wolves, one of them carrying a rider. The students prepared for battle. Then something sparkled behind them. They charged forward just as an arrow pierced the approaching wolf. Their archer teammate was hidden among the rocks, providing support from the rear. They defeated several Gale wolves, earning plus 10 points for each monster. In Area C, another team brought down a giant. Defeating the one-eyed giant earned them plus 25 points. In Area D, a team defeated a goblin scout, earning plus 10 points, and then a goblin vanguard for plus 15 points. Slight cheered in celebration. He hadn't expected them to defeat those enemies. Hope surged within him that they could reach the third floor at this pace. From a distance, Lucas's wolf quietly observed them. The wolf saw that they had defeated 2 Beastman scouts, earning plus 15 points for each monster. Lucas continued observing through the wolf's eyes. Meanwhile, those outside kept monitoring the situation. Greg grew more irritated with every passing minute they remained inside. By then, all 12 martial arts students had reached the stairs leading to the third floor. The professors began whispering among themselves. They couldn't believe these were just freshmen. It made them wonder what Shigard had taught them. None of them expected the martial arts department to reach the third floor. Greg felt nervous, but he still believed it wouldn't happen. Some of the martial arts students were already nearing their physical limits. Greg grinned when he realized they would be forcibly ejected at any moment. Meanwhile, the students continued climbing the staircase. They were completely exhausted. Collins even stumbled. Luckily, Lucas caught him in time. Lucas asked if he was okay. Collins said yes, but it was obvious he had reached his limit. His hand had already started turning holographic. He told Lucas not to worry about him and to go on ahead. Lucas stayed silent. The others said the same. Most of them were beginning to turn holographic as well. They encouraged Lucas to reach the third floor. He was their hope, the one who could prove their department's strength to everyone else. Collins was surprised when another student wrapped an arm around him. It was Sharp. Even with exhaustion written all over his face, he urged them to at least reach the third floor since they had already come this far. Lucas agreed. They were a team. He wanted them to work together and cross the threshold to the third floor as one. Everyone gathered what little strength they had left and continued climbing. Outside the tower, an announcement rang out. The number of people who had reached the third floor of the Allen Tower was 12. They stepped onto a floor covered in flowing lava. The third floor overwhelmed them instantly. Slight suddenly sensed something. 3 massive lizards crawled toward them. The monsters had sharp, beast-like faces, purple skin, and glowing yellow eyes filled with killing intent. Their expressions were tense and aggressive, fangs slightly exposed, as crackling energy and sparks danced around their faces. One of them attacked with its long tongue. In an instant, a hand was severed and fell to the ground. Without any pause, all 3 lizards charged at once. That was what forced them out of the tower. Outside, they talked about how brutal the 3rd floor was. They hadn't even been able to tell how many enemies were present. Slight replied that he saw them clearly. They had been surrounded by 5 monsters. Lucas took note that the 3rd floor was the current limit of the martial arts department. He deliberately let his main body drop out so he wouldn't draw suspicion. However, his clone remained inside the tower. By supporting the 2nd martial arts group with heroic cry, he could guide everyone to the 3rd floor. That way, the entire department would receive better grades, and he wouldn't stand out. More accurately, the whole martial arts department would stand out instead. The other students were in disbelief. Every single martial arts student had reached the 3rd floor. Normally, only elite students could accomplish something like that. Greg found himself in a difficult position. They had to beat the martial arts department in both points and floors reached. He absolutely refused to let the magic class lose to the martial arts department. Inside the tower, a magic class student was startled by a monster leaping toward him. He immediately burned it to ashes. Director Otani watched closely. He wondered if losing to martial artists was really that unbearable. He had seen the student burn through mana like water on just the 1st floor. He couldn't even imagine how they would perform on the 2nd or 3rd floors. With them losing their composure so easily, he couldn't expect much from that year's magic class freshmen. In Group 3, 8 students were eliminated on the 1st floor, and all were eliminated on the 2nd floor. In Group 4, 3 were eliminated on the 1st floor, and all were eliminated on the 2nd floor. In Group 8, none were eliminated on the 1st floor, 6 were eliminated on the 2nd floor, and all were eliminated on the 3rd floor. In short, no student ranked below 41st place reached the 3rd floor. There were even teams where everyone was eliminated on the 1st floor. Greg tightly grabbed a professor's shoulder. He complained that something was clearly wrong. He insisted that this was a trap, set specifically for the magic class. He claimed that the enemies only increased in number and strength when it was the magic class's turn. The professor told him to calm down. Lena spoke up, saying it wasn't appropriate to ignore reality right in front of the students. She asked whether Greg truly didn't know that the Allen Tower was operating normally, or if he was admitting that his own sensory abilities had declined. Greg was about to respond, but to his surprise, she simply walked past him and went to chat with Shigart. Greg bit his lip so hard it bled as he held back his anger. To him, Shigart and the martial artist were nothing but eyesores. Lena told Shigart that it was impressive they had surpassed the magic class, even during the elite group's turn. That was why she had always told him that if he truly tried, he could do it. Shigart replied that it wasn't his doing. It was the result of the students' own hard work. Since the elite class would be entering soon, he asked her if it was really fine for her to stay there. She answered that she wasn't worried about those kids at all. She glanced toward the elite students. Her confidence came from the fact that her class representative was among them. Julia told her group that her brother was amazing. If he got serious, he could even make it past the 4th floor. The other students turned pale. Deep down, they complained that the top freshman's brother was a martial artist of all things. It felt like they had already lost before even starting the trial. The instructor signaled for Julia's group to enter. Lucas wished her good luck. He also reminded her not to forget to eat her candy. The instructor found it strange that he went out of his way to say that. Julia ate it, and the instructor immediately realized it was a magic pill that could rapidly restore mana. Martial artists capable of refining pills of this level were extremely rare these days, making such pills outrageously expensive. Using something like that for a school trial was pure extravagance. Julia's face twisted as she chewed. She realized she had been tricked again. Her mana was already full, but since everyone else was taking medicine before the trial, Lucas wanted her to take some as well. That way, Julia was guaranteed to receive a high grade. Inside the tower, Julia cast Thunderfall. She stood before a giant cyclops, a goblin, and a lizard monster. Lightning crashed down from above. They collapsed instantly. One monster fell beside a patch of small green grass. Iwa was stunned. Calling down lightning with such precision, striking only the enemies without even scorching the grass, meant Julia had incredible control. Julia smiled at her and told her to follow closely behind. On the lava-covered floor, bird monsters were struck down by lightning as well. A lizard monster noticed one of the birds. It crashed into it, and the moment they collided, electricity surged through both of them. Julia watched as the creature fell, completely roasted. A bird landed gently on her staff. It was one of her 1,000 thunderbirds. She told the others that she had already dealt with the nearby enemies and urged Iwa and Derek to keep moving. Derek replied that she had really saved them. The lizard earlier was resistant to fire, making it difficult for a fire mage like him to handle alone. Julia answered that it worked both ways. Iwa scoffed and said that in the real world, she could have simply manipulated their minds and made them kill each other. Julia sincerely agreed. She said that on an actual battlefield, Iwa would be far more impressive. Iwa raised an eyebrow. The illusions inside the Allen Tower had no consciousness, so her mind magic was useless. All she could do here was scout enemy locations. She felt like she was becoming a burden to the other two. Yet instead of complaining, they genuinely acknowledged her abilities. Her face flushed. She decided to let Julia take the spotlight this time. Julia, completely unaware, kept walking forward. Iwa told her to wait. Derek also told her not to run off like that. They didn't realize they were being watched. Iwa sensed something and suddenly stopped. Julia bumped straight into her. Julia asked why she had stopped so suddenly. She wondered if there was an enemy nearby. Her nose turned red from the impact. Iwa said it was nothing, and that she was just imagining things. In truth, she had sensed a strange presence, neither an enemy nor a classmate. Julia told her that if they reached the 4th floor, she should quickly find a route with the fewest enemies. Outside the tower, an announcement rang out. 3 students had reached the 4th floor. Lucas was nearly exposed. He realized just how sharp mind mages really were. A female professor told Lena that it was incredible for 3 freshmen to reach the 4th floor. She said it was proof that Lena's teaching methods were outstanding. Lena replied that it was all thanks to the students' hard work. Achievements like this hadn't appeared in the psychic department for 30 years. Lucas overheard the conversation and wore a satisfied smile. In his mind, it was only natural. Julia was exceptional. The mana pill only increased mana capacity. How far they climbed depended entirely on Julia's skill and the abilities of her teammates. All Lucas had to do was quietly watch over his little sister's growth. That was his role, supporting her from the safety of the Allen Tower. Meanwhile, Julia continued moving forward. Iwa suddenly warned her to be careful. There were 4 enemies at the rear right. The monsters climbed down from a tall bookshelf. One of them was a beast archer with the skill Thunder Arrow. Julia immediately turned around. Before she could cast a spell, the monsters were engulfed in flames. Derek had acted first. He knew Julia had already spent a lot of energy on the 3rd floor. Suddenly, Derek sensed more enemies. He narrowly dodged a Thunder Arrow. Then 3 monsters lunged at him. He unleashed Burning Fire, a technique that formed a raging tornado of flames. All 3 monsters were caught inside. Their bodies were reduced to ashes. Derek felt proud of his fire magic, but the girls ignored him. Iwa warned them that they needed to hurry. An enemy swarm was approaching. Julia asked how many there were. Iwa answered that there were over a dozen, and they were closing in at incredible speed. They ran with everything they had. Iwa sensed danger from behind. Arrows flew toward her, and she barely dodged them in time. But the gate ahead began to close. They were trapped. Then, a massive bipedal pig monster with a horn stepped forward. The large orc and its wolf pet snarled at them. And then more appeared. They were surrounded. Only a metal barrier user could break through the gate. Iwa punched the metal bar. She said there was no other way. The orc swiped at them, but Julia raised a lightning barrier. Electricity crawled along the wolf's claws and shocked it hard. The wolf was thrown to the ground. Iwa said that even high-temperature fire could melt metal. Julia decided they would hold off the enemies while Derek worked on breaking the gate. The orc let out a thunderous roar. Several wolves charged forward. Julia kept the barrier up as the orcs and wolves rushed them at the same time. They struck together. Julia struggled to hold on. Iwa shouted that the 4th one on the left was the fastest and the weakest. Julia shifted her focus and zapped it. She noticed Iwa was doing something strange and got curious, but Iwa had no time to explain. She quickly told her there were 3 on the left and 2 on the right. Julia understood. She struck again and left them charred. Iwa continued using her power. If these enemies had been from the 3rd floor or below, they would have been blown apart already. She realized the monsters on the 4th floor were on a completely different level. She told Julia to take out the one on the right first. Julia followed her lead, but her mana was running low. She admitted she could only restrain the giant's movement for now. Iwa knew they were in trouble. She told Julia to look for an opening and take down the wolf. Deep down, Iwa felt Julia had already done more than enough, and that she was the one who should be apologizing. Julia struck the wolves with lightning, and that finished them. They collapsed to the ground. By then, cracks had spread across the barrier. Julia said they had beaten them all. The giant was still restrained, so they were safe. For now. She grinned at Iwa and asked if she could brag about protecting a classmate like a proper class rep once they got out. Iwa told her not to get carried away, and Julia just laughed. Suddenly, Iwa sensed something. She shoved Julia away. The barrier shattered, and Iwa took the hit instead. She couldn't believe it. She had made a mistake. She hadn't sensed the new wave of monsters approaching. Her body began to fade. With her last strength, she told Julia to run, now. Julia's eyes widened as she saw Iwa slammed into the ground. She screamed, "No!" as tears poured down her face. Derek incinerated the monster. He told Julia he could only open a gap small enough for her to squeeze through and ordered her to go immediately. But she refused. She wanted to fight together. She wanted to keep going. Derek yelled at her not to waste her remaining mana. The giant punched him. He shielded himself in flames. Then he formed a massive flame construct, standing at its core. He screamed at Julia to run. Then the explosion came. It was already night outside the tower. An announcement rang out. 2 students had dropped out, leaving only 1 person still on the 4th floor. No one expected the original 3 to make it any farther than that. Derek said that in that moment, they had acted on instinct. They protected Julia. the only one with a real chance to keep going. He believed they did well. Iwa replied that she was just returning the favor. If this weren't Allen Tower, where mental magic users were heavily disadvantaged, she wouldn't lose to anyone. She walked past Julia, who was still sitting on the ground. She glanced at her. Director Otani noticed their teamwork, a scout tracking the illusion's movements and an engineer dismantling traps. Each of them understood their own strengths and limits and made the right decisions because of it. He thought it was magnificent, and he believed the same applied to the two still inside the tower. Inside, the library was burning. The giant orc lay sprawled on the floor as Lucas kicked it hard, blasting it into the wall. He had defeated it. From the footprints, he realized Julia had already passed through. Elsewhere, lightning lit up the battlefield. Julia struck down several enemies at once. She pushed herself forward, determined to reach the safe zone before her mana ran dry. Different kinds of monsters blocked her path. Her cheek began to turn holographic, but she thought of everyone. She screamed at the monsters to get out of her way as she blasted them with lightning. They all fell together. She refused to let Derek and Iwa's sacrifice be wasted. Then she noticed something at the edge of her vision. She froze in confusion. Something had flown past her, and suddenly, she didn't feel as tired. It was Lucas. He used Hero's War Cry, boosting fighting spirit to reduce fatigue and increasing defense and attack power by 30% for 10 minutes. With that, he believed she could clear the 4th floor. Allen Tower would close once all the students finished their trials. If he wanted to investigate the upper floors, this was his only chance. Suddenly, he woke up underwater. It was the 5th floor. He could tell from the entrance alone. He started swimming. A massive lanternfish monster drifted nearby, along with an aquatic humanoid creature. Lucas hid. He chose to avoid unnecessary fights and save his strength for the 6th floor. The aquatic humanoid checked his hiding spot. It froze when it found nothing. Instead, another aquatic humanoid stood there. The creature stared in shock. What it was seeing was Lucas's shape-shifted clone. Realizing the fisherman-type monster wasn't very smart, Lucas moved on toward the 6th floor. 5 minutes later, he burst out of the water. On the way, he casually knocked aside a huge red serpent monster. Meanwhile, Julia was being chased by a beetle monster. She ran as fast as she could. 10 minutes later. Lucas kept pushing forward, cutting down several monsters along the way. Julia ran into another wolf monster. Her brows tightened. She gathered her remaining mana and struck it down. 20 minutes later, she stood before the entrance of a tall tower. She stepped inside and immediately collapsed. She had reached the tower's interior, a safe zone. At the same moment, Lucas arrived at his destination as well. Both of them were relieved they had made it. Lucas stood before a portal. He reached out his hand and froze. He was floating in the cosmos. He couldn't believe it. This was the 6th floor. Lucas stepped onto a floating rock. He noticed there were no monsters. There was no concept of space either. All that stood before him was a stone monument. He extended his hand. He wondered if the monument was absorbing his battle aura. His aura flowed into the symbol. It showed an axe at the center, with a sword and a spear placed diagonally, facing opposite sides. The symbol glowed brightly. Director Otani realized that the child he was observing had truly reached the 6th floor. He confirmed it was the war god's legacy, but it came with a problem. Lucas's sister was nearing her limit. Julia now faced a gigantic lanternfish. How much knowledge Lucas could absorb before the Allen Tower closed depended entirely on him. Lucas felt overwhelmed. His mind was pulled into a vision. The war god stood before a massive void. A pitch-black, round creature spoke. It told Mars that it had won this time, but its seeds were already planted in the world. No matter how many tens of thousands of years it took, it swore it would return. Mars's golden light shot into the sky. Annoyed, he told the creature to stop its noisy babbling. He clenched his fist. Power condensed into a single point. He roared for it to die already, then unleashed the war god's supreme art, Heaven Breaker. As the vision zoomed out, the black mass revealed itself. It was a pupil. The entire thing was a massive eyeball, bathed in Mars' golden light. The impact cracked the eyeball. Seen from outer space, it was the eye of a colossal dragon-like monster. The giant creature grinned. Lucas was stunned. He wondered if that vision showed a battle from the war god's past. He didn't know when it happened, but the evil entity had claimed it left seeds behind. That made him think of the Minotaur and the zombie monster from before. He decided he needed to investigate this more thoroughly. He touched the stone monument. A massive holographic hand suddenly reached for him. Lucas sensed it and dodged, thinking it was an enemy attack, but he quickly realized the target wasn't him. The hand struck the stone monument instead. Lucas could no longer read the section where the hand made contact. Then the hand pulled back. He finally understood. It had been aiming for the monument all along. Though he avoided the attack, he was still ejected. That made him think Julia had dropped out. With the monument gone, there was no reason for him to remain in the Allen Tower. His clone merged back with his main body. Shigart noticed him and wondered what had happened this time. Lucas could feel that something inside his body had changed. He wondered if it was because he witnessed the war god's technique in that vision. The gears of the tower's lock began to turn. On the screen, Julia appeared with a smile. Director Otani hoped these young ones would continue to devote themselves diligently. The trial had concluded, and the Allen Tower began to close. Just then, the final participant completed their challenge. The instructor urged everyone to welcome her with a round of applause. Kai had been asleep, so the sudden cheering startled him awake. He was shocked to learn that it was already over. Julia had rewritten the records of the Allen Magic Academy. She exited the tower with a bright smile. The instructor announced that she had reached the 5th floor. Director Otani entered the library. Someone was already waiting for him and had poured the tea in advance. Director Otani turned toward that person. It was the headmaster. He assumed Otani already knew why he was there and bluntly asked what had happened during the Allen Tower trial. Director Otani accepted the cup and replied that there should not have been any irregularities. The headmaster said it was strange that the mage class freshmen performed so poorly. Many students had failed to earn even a single point. Director Otani pointed out that 18 students scored 0 points, and last year there had been 12, so it was still within the margin of error. But the headmaster argued that the number of students who reached the 2nd floor was only half of last year's. Director Otani suggested that he ask the mage class advisor about it. He added that he personally wanted to question how they were teaching if students were losing their composure that badly. Then he pointed out that the headmaster was so focused on the mage class that he had overlooked an anomaly in the martial arts department. That made the headmaster ask what kind of anomaly had occurred in the martial arts department. Otani replied that 4 students had their martial artist restrictions loosened after the trial and were on the verge of leveling up. Shigart was currently assisting them. The headmaster was shocked. He asked if that meant the Allen Tower might accelerate a martial artist's growth. He knew it would be disastrous if that information became public. The world was full of martial artists desperate to level up. Both he and Director Otani were growing old. He had no intention of holding the Allen Tower trial again, except to find a strong martial artist candidate to become the next caretaker. He instructed Otani not to speak of it until the information could be verified. Director Otani replied that he understood. He added that a genius of the century had appeared this year, so the headmaster should be happier. Meanwhile, the mage students were chatting excitedly about how a mage had set a new record. They exclaimed that Julia was truly a genius mage. They also said it was a shame that she had such an incompetent martial artist for a brother. They envied that man. Jeremy overheard them and felt his anger rise. Even if he and Julia had different mothers, she was still his sister. Yet Lucas received all the attention. He couldn't understand why a useless person like Lucas had to be Julia's biological brother. At the cafeteria, Theodore entered through the window riding on his flames. As expected, the girls immediately squealed when they saw him. He smiled at them. That kind of attention was familiar to him. He believed that even if Julia broke the record, the school idol was still him. But when Julia entered and all the attention shifted to her, his ego took a direct hit. They admired her from afar, whispering about how cute she looked while eating. They even noticed that her meal cost 20 points, and that 20 points meant nothing to her. Theodore cursed Julia inwardly. She had received 1,000 points just for breaking the Allen Tower record. Lucas encouraged Julia to earn even more. Suddenly, Theodore slid over to their table. Lucas noticed how fast he moved. He wondered what Theodore wanted. Theodore told Julia that she was talented, but she shouldn't get cocky just because she reached the 5th floor of the Allen Tower. Julia replied with her mouth full, asking what he meant. He had to repeat himself, but he couldn't continue because he suddenly sensed a powerful energy. He noticed her magical energy surging. If she lost control, it could damage his reputation, so he hurried away, warning her that she would regret it. He made a dramatic exit by riding his flames once again. Julia wondered what was wrong with him. Lucas told her to ignore him and keep eating. Internally, Lucas made sure Theodore would understand that he was wrong to think he could intimidate Julia. He activated Hero's war cry, boosting her fighting spirit and reducing fatigue. Her attack and defense increased by 30% for 10 minutes. Mina approached them and remarked that it was rare for Theodore to leave without saying his usual line, "You cannot surpass the school's #1. She congratulated Julia, admitting that she was more talented than she had expected. Julia replied that it was all thanks to her 2 teammates, lending her their strength. That made Mina wonder if those 2 would also be useful during the goddess's requiem. Lucas asked what that was. Mina realized they hadn't heard of it. So she explained that along with their school, the Kyoto Magic School and the Holy Magic School were known as the 3 great magic schools of the Carmina Empire. Every year, 9 outstanding freshmen were chosen from the 3 schools to determine who stood at the pinnacle of the new generation of geniuses. She was certain that Julia would be participating that year. Lucas found it interesting. He wondered if Julia felt the same way. At the elite class girls' dormitory, someone was being jolted awake by an alarm clock. It was Julia. Since she had proven herself in the Allen Tower, Lucas no longer woke her up in the mornings. She hurried. With toast in her mouth and books in her arms, she dashed forward, using Thunder Dash. She crashed straight into Iwa. Iwa glared at her and told her to watch where she was going. During class, they ended up sitting next to each other. Julia realized she had forgotten her textbook and was on the verge of tears. Iwa noticed. So she pulled her desk closer and shared her book, telling Julia to stop making that face since she could look at hers. Later, in the library, Julia struggled to reach a book on a high shelf. Someone grabbed it for her. It was Iwa. Julia thanked her, but Iwa had already walked away, at the cafeteria. Lucas noticed Julia was deep in thought. She imagined an angel version of Iwa and a devil version of her. Lucas told her that if she really wanted to know what Iwa thought of her, she had to figure it out herself. They headed to class after that. In one lesson, the headmaster demonstrated magic by creating birds made of water. He explained that mastering delicate mana control was useful even in daily life. The students were amazed. Iwa watched from a distance. Julia secretly watched her. She clenched her fist. Then she created a bird made of thunder. She showed it to Iwa, but she used a bit too much mana, and ended up zapping Iwa in the face. Iwa stared straight at Julia, her eyes glowing with a cold, terrifying intensity. Julia went pale and ran away. That night, Iwa walked down the hallway holding a book. When she entered her room, she found Julia sitting there, fast asleep, and drooling. The drool was about to drip onto the blanket. Iwa sighed. She noticed a box wrapped in star-patterned paper on the table. Curious, she read the card. It made her smile. It was a letter from Julia, apologizing for what happened. She invited Iwa to go out and included cookies to make up for it. Iwa wrote back that cookies alone wouldn't earn forgiveness, but she ate them anyway and said they were delicious. She added that if she felt like it, she would go with her tomorrow, the next day. Iwa was already waiting and growing impatient. Julia had invited her, yet she was late. Iwa muttered that she was hopeless. Julia arrived and apologized for making her wait. Iwa immediately pointed out that she was late. Iwa froze. She hadn't expected Lucas to be there. Julia cheerfully announced that she brought her brother and that he would be treating them. Iwa had agreed because she thought it would be just Julia. Lucas could see the look of disgust on her face. Julia remained completely clueless. Someone spotted them. It was Maya. She asked the siblings if they were going out. Julia hugged her and asked if she wanted to come along too. Maya asked if Lucas was going with them. Her face instantly turned red. She blushed so hard it looked like smoke might come out of her ears. She accepted the invitation. Iwa grew even more irritated. She didn't even know who Maya was. Julia grabbed both of their hands as they started walking and announced that they were heading to the food district in Daku Town. Lucas hadn't expected things to turn out like this. Now he was paying for all three of them. Alright, that's it for today's story. If you want the weekly chapter updates for this series, those will now be uploaded on my second channel, Manhwa Updater. So if you don't want to miss what happens next, make sure to check it out and join the update gang. Thanks for watching, stay cool, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.